that social grouping will pressure Kyle into not backing out if he is a part of the social group versus if we leave completely?
No, because I feel like what happens is you just become one of the good ones. That's what it felt like for me a lot. And that was a trend that I'd noticed where I thought I was doing a thing where it's like, look, I can show you that Democrats can be reasonable. And instead, people just view me as like the one reasonable Democrat. Much the same that like a person being friends with one black person doesn't make them not racist. They just think that that one black guy is like one of the good ones and he's an exception to all of the other bigoted views they have. I don't know how much pressure there is, especially when I think structurally we're getting deeper and deeper into a world that is just not favoring moderates. So like I mentioned a lot that the gerrymandering I think hurts moderate left Dems because you're never going to gerrymander a DSA person out of their seat. So a district that was like 55% Dem, 45% Republican is probably going to produce a more moderate Democrat than a district that's like 70% Democrat, 30% Republican. So like they enjoy that structural advantage as well. So it's just like, yeah, there's a lot of these like things that are, I feel like kind of pernicious in the background or in the foreground that are working that scare me about DSA presence in the party.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear. The loudest and the
Loud
clearest.
and clear.
What?
Oh yeah. How are y'all doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well. So welcome to the Jolah experience. My name is Jolah with an L. Jolah Politics on YouTube. Streaming from there. I'm mostly a TikToker, though recently. Better numbers on there if you want to find me. I saw a post from someone in your community. Is it true last night you called Pisco a functional anti-Semite?
Yeah.
Why would you call Pisco an anti-Semite?
I feel like when you are like in effect practicing like or helping to spread like all of the essentially anti-Semitic talking points, even if you get to them in a non-anti-Semitic way, I feel like functionally there's like not much of a difference. I think the AIPAC obsession has moved like super far in that direction. Like I think we're pretty over the line. I'm seeing this person takes AIPAC money for like $42 an hour or whatever on on these track AIPAC things. I don't know, I think it's kind of
It was 57, but yeah.
My bad. Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, that's a nice Longhorn steak dinner. Don't discount it. My big question would be: is there ever a time where it's legitimate for a candidate to hyper focus on AIPAC if AIPAC is taking like a prime position against that candidate?
Yeah, I'm sure there could be. Yeah.
On this Michigan primary right now, in terms of outside money, Abdul has, I believe, around like $1 million in outside money. Haley Stevens is getting more money from outside donors at a 70-to-1 ratio to Abdul. And I'm pretty sure like 40 or 45 million of that is from AIPAC, which is like I'm pretty sure a record for a Democratic primary. So in that sense, it seems like AIPAC has an outsized influence in that primary. So is everybody who criticizes like AIPAC in that sense going to be leaning into anti-Semitism?
For the Michigan race or in general?
Yeah, because I think you commented on Pisco's defense of El Sayed or El Sayed.
I don't even remember what the context of my comment was exactly. I'm for the outside spending because I'm too lazy to look this up right now. Is this like this is including independent expenditures? I'm assuming, yeah.
It includes every C4. It includes like the United Democracy PAC from that AIPAC funnels money through, and like the energy PACs as well. So yeah, pretty much every outside PAC C4.
I guess I guess I just feel the obsession, the singularly focused obsessive point about AIPAC, combined with like people love to throw around that Israel comes to me in my dreams line over and over again, combined with the national conversation going on. It kind of feels like I've been like gaslit into some area where in order for a thing to be anti-Semitism, you have to say fuck Jewish people. Otherwise, if you don't say that, everything else is clear. Like everything else is like above board. I don't know. It feels pretty weird to me, but.
How do you make sure your group doesn't become like your political group doesn't become too horny or too thorny to outsiders who are like, you know, maybe they join DSA or a progressive group and they say they think it's Bernie Sanders and Mamdani and they don't see the anti-Semitic elements that you see, but they see El Sayed being outspent 70-to-1, and regardless if you think like money in politics has a huge impact, that's a pretty big difference in outside money, and the fact that Stevens is still down in Michigan is probably a bad testament to the quality of candidate she is as well, in my opinion, if she has such big backing and she can't really compete with El Sayed. But when we like say it's anti-Semitic instantly when you complain about AIPAC, and AIPAC spends $45 million, I feel like Shit, if APAC and big donors don't want to be the focus of progressives, and if big money does not influence politics as much as like you, because I've heard you say before you don't think it influences it that much. And I think with like Tom Steyer, we've seen it's not going to help you win a race. It might help you get like a astroturfed campaign. But if it doesn't influence politics that much, then APAC should stop spending money on races like this if it's not going to impact it. Then when progressives complain about APAC, if APAC spends $0 on a race, how could they even, how could progressives even attack them then?
So is the argument that APAC shouldn't spend money anymore because it would take that talking point from people criticizing them? I mean, I guess the question is, fuck me. Okay, I don't have the numbers in front of me. Okay, okay, I'm turning my brain on to 100%, or at least 80%. When we say that APAC has spent 30 million, 40 million outside dollars, is this actually APAC, or is this like a combination of PACs that people have all labeled as part of APAC or something? Because I've noticed that the track APAC thing gets a little bit goofy sometimes, and I'll see like people will talk about, well, these are APAC aligned PACs. And there'll be PACs that aren't actually related at all, but because they have some similar interests, or because, APAC people have donated from one to the other, they consider all of it APAC. It starts to feel like, because Jewish people in the United States have a large enough political presence, you can basically say all money is APAC money if you're willing to be flexible enough on your definition. If Abdul focused like on outside spending for races, which as much as it might be happening here, I don't believe that's super unique to Senate races. I know that for the runoffs for Warnock and Ossoff, there was a ton. I might be making this up, but I feel like there was up to $1 billion in outside spending for those 2 Senate seats. It was a fucking huge amount of money, and I'm sure this happens in other Senate seats. Like I bet Plattner raised a ton of money outside of Maine, would be my guess. Just because a lot of these candidates get popular. I know AOC has raised a lot of money outside of her district. So, yeah, I would be curious how much of this 30, 40 million or whatever, how much of this is like actually APAC money versus like independent expenditures outside stuff that everybody's just calling APAC.
So the one PAC to look into, yeah, sure.
It's just the obsessive focus on APAC, 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 APAC. If it was just outside spending or whatever, it'd be a little bit different, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't like people using Zion, like really digging into the Z and Zionist as a slur. I'm definitely not into that. But the PAC to look into is the United Democracy Project. So that one, this is from July 30th from Mother Jones. I know people don't like that source for a lot of things, but the spending at that point was $30 million on July 15th reported. And now I believe the number is up to the 45 million from that one PAC alone, which is considered a pro-Israel super PAC affiliated with APAC. I've heard some people say it's one of those branches they use to like conceal that is actual, Israeli money going into the Democratic Party by saying it's United Democracy or saying it's like black women for Democrats or whatever, and concealing it. But that is the one PAC that is the main focus here. And I wouldn't say that it's going to buy Haley Stevens the race against Abdul, but I would say that it gave her a huge edge over forcing, and I know Hutch talked about this a lot. He interviewed McMorrow. All that funding forced McMorrow out of the race, in my opinion, who's a far better candidate than Stevens, who's like a train wreck. So I think that APAC in this scenario actually screwed over our chance to have a real competitor to Abdul because they funded Haley Stevens to such an extent that McMorrow had to just drop out because her numbers were so low.
Why do we think that? Why are we assuming that McMorrow was the better candidate?
I assume she's the better candidate because the electorate in these Democratic primaries, especially in Michigan, wanted a more progressive option, in my opinion. And Haley Stevens, for example, she's the one that went outside the ICE facility, or she went to survey one. And she came out and said, there are wonderful public servants in there. I'm very happy to see a large female presence. And she said nothing else about it. And she's been against doing things like getting rid of the being aggressive with like the filibuster. She did get more aggressive on those positions for this primary, but she's also very bad at presenting herself. Her ads are very corny. She answered questions in the debate with I'm endorsed by Barack Obama, and you can see videos of her running up to black people and being like, hey guys, Obama likes me. She can't even really campaign on her own regard, in my opinion. And I mean, it's it's obviously subjective. If
sure,
McMorrow
yeah,
was better,
I guess because my question that I'm getting to here is that in a way I agree with you. I mean, I like McMorrow. I liked her a lot over Stevens, but I guess I'm curious why it just seemed like McMorrow was not able to get anywhere in the polling. So I mean, as much as I might have liked her, apparently people in Michigan feel differently. I know there's complicated issues around signaling related to immigration stuff. You mentioned visiting an ICE facility, and I know that there are a lot of problems that we have with ICE right now, but there's also a lot of problems with the whole like defund the police and abolish ICE movement that leaves some citizens feeling like, oh, this person doesn't want to do any kind of like immigration or legal enforcement at all, and they're kind of like radical. So like the signaling on that from the Democratic side is kind of difficult. Yeah, I don't know. I
I
guess
would
I'm just,
argue that I'd rather, in this political climate, and this is probably the meat of the conversation about like DSA. And I guess I could just get into my view of DSA and why I think your approach is lackluster in terms of providing an off ramp to those who join DSA, thinking it's like a Bernie Mamdani club. So the DSA might be healthy for Democrats in terms of, one, I think they provide good competition for Democrats who usually feel pretty safe. They do win in these seats that have like 30, 40-year incumbents or very flawed candidates like an Andrew Cuomo. Or like a Janet Mills, who didn't even really campaign versus Plattner. She was down 40 points, gave up right away. She didn't even want to run. Janet Mills forced out other moderate candidates. So you have progressives finding someone who could be a very presentable, like powerful speaker. And meanwhile, the so-called establishment just has a Chuck Schumer calling whoever's in his phone book. And that turns out to be Janet Mills, who's not even like, not even wanting to really run. So having to dig in deeper than just being anti-Trump as a Democratic Party. And when they say, we want fully closed borders, having to advocate against that, I think can be healthy to provide our affirmative position for it. And it's hard to avoid this problem. I think DSA eventually, which I don't know if anyone would really agree with me right now, but I think DSA can end up leading to an overall higher youth turnout for Democrats in general. So like in the New York City mayoral primary, which is, it's a rare occurrence that happened there, but voters 18 to 29 turned out at 3 times the rate for this mayoral primary than they did in 2021. And 2/3 of all new voter registrations in New York were people under 30. I think DSA is casting a very wide net and kind of showing some Democrats how to message on a basis that can be popular with younger people. And I do think that many of the DSA are going to split off. So calling them like a cancer growing in the party, calling them like communists who are trying to infiltrate us. I don't want random ass DSA members saying that, because we're talking about them in that way when we really mean the national party sucks and we turn away possible allies in the future.
So there's a world where I agree with you 100%. Like, I think so in a perfect world, the way this would work is, you would have this DSA thing come up. You would see them start to butt heads with the kind of like the moderate Democratic Party. The moderate Democratic Party would start to see losses in areas where, for reasons I don't understand, they back insane, stupid choices like Cuomo or Mills or just people that I guess like we should realize is probably not good. And the DSA is kind of like exposing those flaws. And then there's some kind of like, some kind of like thesis, antithesis, synthesis or whatever, where it's like, okay, well, we're going to adopt some of their messaging or some of their ideas. And you kind of have this like coming together of the DSA in a way making the entire Democratic wing stronger. I guess my 2 big issues right now, my 2 big scary things right now for why I don't like the things that are happening is that, one, I do think there are a lot of DSA leaders that don't view themselves as like people in the Democratic Party who are trying to push the Democratic Party in a better direction. I view them as like malicious and subversive actors. So that's one part that bothers me a lot. And then the second part is the Democratic Party seems at the moment, and when I say Democratic Party, I mean from leadership down to the media, seems unable or unwilling to confront or engage with that reality. So what happens is we end up in a weird world where some of the party leadership is kind of like out of touch or doesn't know how to meet the moment. The other people that are more in touch are too scared to say anything about this like subversive element in the Democratic Party. And then as that goes on, like I only see that as turning out poorly for Democrats, I guess. Yeah, would be my broad thoughts. As far as like when you say like people that join the DSA, like these people aren't all cancer or whatever, I think I've said this a million times. Like even for Hassan's audience, like 90% of them are probably close to what like a bog standard progressive would be. Like I don't think they're like ultra socialist tankies, commies or whatever. I agree with that. But I just the leadership and the leadership and the leader figures I think are very intentionally subversive people and it bothers me that nobody is able to tango with that, because I feel like they can just take over the party in a very bad way.
What did okay? So like, what is how does what you're saying right now conflict with like Shervin, that one guy the other day that said he was a part of College Dems when he advocated for you still speaking at events and influencing Democrats to move away from being like DSA College Dems? Are you just saying you don't feel like using your time for that, or you think it's not like possible, or like is it
Well, when I look at like College Dems, that like this is part of my issue with this is part of my issue when I say I feel like the people aren't capable of having like limiting principle on the more extremist elements on their side. So I feel like the College Dems, from everything I've seen and heard, there was an executive board that made a decision largely independent from the rest of these wings or chapters. And I mean, I would say, obviously it comes off as biased because I'm the affected party, but I would say it has a negative impact on, what a liberal Democrat should feel relating to the DSA, or not the DSA, related to the DCA, the Democratic, this event that happened. And if other chapters or wings don't like make a statement or do something about that, it just further demonstrates to me the idea that like, okay, well, these are people in the party who aren't able to limit kind of the more extremist wing of the party, and that's not good. Like that kind of stuff needs to kind of be pushed aside, and people that can take a better view of things I think would be healthier. So like when I argue with Josiah or Pisco, for example, I think they're great when it comes to pushing on the right. I think they're great when it comes to their positions themselves, but their lack of ability to push against like the more extreme views are problematic, I would say. Like I can give a grounded example if you want, or you can go from that. Yeah.
I guess that does get into the prescription. So I had a question about Pisco and Josiah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if you used the example of Josiah made a video that was really hard after Bill Maher,
Mm-hmm.
and you said he would never make that video about Crystal Ball or Kyle Kalinske. Do you think if Josiah or Pisco made videos like that about Crystal Ball, that they would ever be invited on Crystal and Kyle and Friends and like Breaking Points ever? Like, would they ever be invited again?
Ever again? Maybe. In the short term, probably not.
Okay. Yeah, because if the reality was they feel that they are a sensitive, political grouping, Breaking Points, Secular Talk, a few of the larger lefty channels, and Pisco can either make videos that are super hard after Crystal Ball and get like 1,000 views from people who are followers of you or followers of freaking Vosh or Hassan, get views from them. But he might sacrifice the opportunity. I'm pretty sure his appearances on Breaking Points have garnered over like 1 million views. So would you say it's worth it for Pisco to like, I know you call it sweeping, but do you think he's playing an inside game so he could be there to influence it? And maybe when Democrats are up for election, he can provide an off ramp to try and lead Kyle and Crystal to not, they have massive audiences. They're not going anywhere. Do you think he's trying to lead, do you think he's in good faith trying to do that? Or do you think he's like a useful idiot? Like, what do you think Pisco's trying to do there?
Those aren't exclusionary or exclusive to the right. Like you can be good faith and a useful idiot, right? Definitionally, I think useful idiots don't know that they're being idiots. My assumption for Pisco, Josiah, I don't think is bad faith. Definitely not. I don't believe Pisco is. I don't know. I'm not at that point where I'm like, I think Pisco is also like a subversive operator. I just, I don't know. It would take more to move me in that direction. But I think when I look at, okay, well, here's an issue. Okay, so obviously I'm familiar with this argument. I lived this argument for a long time with the Daily Wire people, the conservatives and everything else. Do you recognize, or do you agree with me that if you have this viewpoint of I need to reach out to them, so I need to play nice with them, understanding that these people will never play nice with me, do you acknowledge or do you agree that that's an exploitable algorithm?
I believe that, so like James Tallarico and John Ossoff, there are two candidates who use the term Epstein class. That was Graham Plattner and John Ossoff. And there's two candidates who use the term top versus bottom the most. That's Bernie Sanders and James Tallarico. And I do think there's going to be a group of the left that, the Hassan types that turn against them. But I think Tallarico and Ossoff are examples of possibly finding exploits by borrowing the rhetoric, doing some policies like some popular sounding policies, maybe, I don't know, stock buybacks or something that's relatively easy and popular with a broad group of voters. I think there is a possible exploit somewhere there.
Sorry, when maybe I wasn't clear. Sorry. When I say exploitable algorithm, what I mean is that you're setting yourself up to constantly be exploited by another party. They found like a loophole in your programming, and now they can always take advantage of you, and you have no way to respond. So, for instance, if I say like every time I go to your house, I can take a candy bar, but when you come to my house, I'm never going to give you a candy bar, because you have like an open food policy and I don't. It's like, okay, well that means that every single time every single time I go to your house, I get to steal candy bars from you. I'm gonna get more food. You know. It's
Yeah, I guess
it's a
I
one-sided
yeah.
policy where basically you're creating a structure where, because we have to work with them, we're gonna, this is like the treadmill thing that I'm kind of talking about. We have to work with them, meaning we have to be nice to them. We can't be overly critical of them, but they are going to be as harsh as possible to us. And because we want access to their platform, we're going to have to play by this rule set. You're creating a structure to where they can infinitely shit on you and attack you. And then this could manifest in ways. So in the past, when I talk about this stuff, I'm always saying like, well, this is stuff we have to worry about in the future. You know, this could come to fruition in this way and it'd be really bad. But I feel like now we've kind of moved past that and this has already happened. So like, I would say that the end game for this would be like Kyle Kalinske and Hassan Piker and all these people not endorsing Kamala Harris, which is insane to me. If that's the type of allies that we're now forced to work with, who can infinitely exploit your inability to criticize them, I feel like it's a losing strategy in the long term.
And I guess the issue is, what ability do we have to reach their audience when they are hypocritical? So like when Crystal Ball, on the very rigid issues, when it's very clear we have to dig our heels in. So Crystal Ball talking about Ukraine, and she basically does like insane Russian shit like every freaking day. Like she blames Ukraine for trying to start World War III. She's even worse than the DSA platform, I feel like. Then Kyle still calls Putin a war criminal. He's very clear on, you know, which side is wrong. He doesn't do the same apologia. They are married. I wonder how they have that discussion in the bedroom. But then you have like Hassan, who did that, and it's so clever the way they do it, where he votes on camera. He doesn't say who he's voting for, so he has the ability in the future to claim he did like literally any action past that. And
I will say for that real quick, I read the text, so I didn't actually watch the video, but apparently he said to Donnie on CNN that he didn't support Harris in 2024. I think this is the first time he's like openly stated that.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't watch the video. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we have to. That comes out Sunday, I believe. But yeah, what is the ability to transfer that? And I've seen with and I've looked at Pisco's numbers because I was curious if it's working. After he goes on a Breaking Points episode where it has like 250,000 views on it, and Pisco's numbers do not move at all. He gets no extra followers on YouTube, no extra followers on Twitter. So it is a question of how much ability is there when Democrats are up for election? Can Josiah, can Pisco, can they really hold Kyle accountable when he says he would drag his bare raw balls over broken glass and magma to vote for Democrats over any Republican? But then he calls like Haley Stevens a MAGA Republican, you know, or MAGA light. So there is a question on how much they can transfer the ability, if it's mutualistic at all. I don't know if Pisco is big enough to be taken advantage of, or I don't know if he can come give permission for them to do. I don't know if he's large enough. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
So let's say that you're having the same talk with Kyle Kalinske, Crystal Ball, and all like the lefty squad. Do you agree with me when I say that they operate on a structure of like similar to MAGA, and that like we won't be questioned? We have like support for all of our candidates. We're not going to host our own like insane self-criticism. Like we're just going to be, I don't want to say sycophantic. It's got a negative tinge, obviously, but like we are going to uncritically support all of our people, you know, basically indefinitely. How would you counsel them? Like, why do you think they operate in that way? Or do you agree that they operate in that way? Maybe you don't agree. Maybe you think that they don't operate as in the way that I say they do. Yeah.
They would probably say that people like you are small potatoes, and they can get on some Democratic representative, and that Democrat can argue in a way that is at a college reading level or maybe high school, and Crystal can respond at a sixth grade reading level, and it looks like she won the conversation, like versus like Smith and whatever, not even considering like, oh, you combine two societies that are both illiberal, and you think that's going to result in a liberal democracy.
I guess
Democrats
what I'm asking is like,
yeah, sure.
do you agree that they will only host people like if they host a moderate Dem or something, it's going to be on the attack. And if they host one of their own, you know, a more left-leaning person, it's going to be to have like a glaze session, basically. I think that's the way that they operate. Do you think that they're wrong in operating that way? Would you be giving her the advice of like, hey, like I think that we should be more open to building our coalition and doing this, or what? I guess like how would you view? Do you think they're operating rationally, or that?
Yeah, I would say Yeah, I would say it's very smart the way they are acting in terms of their propaganda and their political purposes. And I don't know if we have a way to break into it because of the media bubbles and algorithms we have to contest with if we can't ever really reach their followers because they don't allow opposing voices on there. So that'd be my question. That's my question about like Pisco if he did go against them, if they would reject him, if they would cut him out completely in these movements. And that's why I think we need to hit these flashpoints when there are Democrats who are up for election. That needs to be the big separation point. That needs to be where we really put everything, to the pavement and demand that they support Democrats, and we take a really good record of what they decided to do in those situations. Ask about the real solutions for ICE, and this is when I talk about the off ramp. I think it is difficult if we say, well, money in politics barely has an impact, and stopping stock buybacks is dumb because it's not that big of a policy and all that kind of stuff. We have to give some wins to that rhetoric, like Ossoff and Tallarico are doing, where there's not going to be any off ramp whatsoever to the DSA. And I am definitely further left than you are, and I'm very obviously anti-China, anti-Russia, although like Hassan is in favor of that. And my question is usually, how can I tell people who are normie progressives that follow Hassan that my way to do progressivism is better, it's more effective. I'm doing it the Bernie Sanders way. Hassan's not doing it that way, and I will result in better results to the same goal. Because they are very good at being slimy and hiding that. And liberals are often, like I heard Hutch say, sometimes it is F the voters. Voters are dumb. And I've heard you say that too. And I know, this is a different realm from like real politics, but we have to be a little bit sloppulist to get people on board.
I think the challenge with that, so the first thing is that again, like in a perfect world, or in a world where the other people weren't as intentional, I feel like this would be a way to operate. But the thing is I feel like they'll use you for as long as you're willing to build credibility with them, which is to appease them. But then as soon as it comes time for you to actually make that hard ask, where it's like, okay, hey, like, it's time to get serious, like, you guys need to support the candidate, I think instantaneously they bump you. They're like, okay, well, we're done having you on. And then I feel like no amount of credibility, maybe I'm projecting too hard for my little conservative runs, but it feels like as soon as I started to get very, very, very critical of the Trump stuff, all the credibility that I built had instantly become irrelevant, regardless of any position or anything that I took on anything else, regardless of my Rittenhouse takes or anything else. And some people can say, oh, well, it's because, you came off as unhinged or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, I don't know. A lot of liberals thought my Rittenhouse take was very unhinged, but conservatives loved that take from me. So I feel like it was a more strategic thing of like, well, hold on. If this guy's not going to play ball anymore, then he's out and we're going to find another lib, or we're just not going to talk to these people at all. So I feel like one of the things that I worry about is that day of, we're going to make our ask now, that day never actually comes, and that's a very intentional way that they operate, such that you're never going to have an opportunity to make that ask. And then I guess the example that I would point to would be the most obvious one would be, why should we expect them to support our candidates in the future if they couldn't support Kamala Harris in 2024? Like, I feel like there will never be an election as obvious as that one, but that was still, I guess, too far for them to support Harris for.
When Bernie Sanders and AOC, I feel like, do you agree they were some of the biggest like Joe Biden defenders during his presidency, Bernie and AOC?
I don't know about Bernie. AOC definitely tried to. Yeah, absolutely. I think AOC was the only voice. I remember that fucking Instagram call. I think she was like the only fucking person in the party who did like an Instagram live and was like, listen, guys, I know it's rough, but if Biden is our candidate, we have to fucking support him. Yeah, holy shit. Yeah, I remember that.
I feel like AOC is really the point where you have to kind of fight on this issue around. And AOC has taken months off the internet because of being hounded by far leftists. And she even said recently, she clarified, like, I'm not from a militant leftist family. I'm from a working class family. I care about being effective and getting things done for working class people. I think AOC needs to be hugged in these conversations. And the same thing with the quote that Obama gave to the banks in 2009. Obama said to the banks, I'm the one standing between you and the pitchforks. And I do think AOC, I feel that AOC is like, you might say it's dangerous, but this populist fervor, this anger, whatever the momentum is, and Bernie tried doing this. And I've heard people from your community tell me, like, when AOC defended Biden, it was all part of the plan. When she said Kamala was working tirelessly for a ceasefire, that wasn't AOC making concessions. It was all part of the plan. And that kind of came after I heard you say that, what if AOC just does what she's doing now, or Zoran is doing, and she welcomes all the communists in. But I do think she's kind of using them as leverage to the Democrats to say, like, this is what voters are thinking. Like, everyone hates data centers. People are rioting everywhere about data centers. That's going to be a popular issue for Democrats. That's one reason that Francesca in Wisconsin is winning, because the other candidate will not make the same like moratorium concession, whether, regardless of what you think about that policy. But AOC might be using this DSA radicalism as her bargaining chip. Like, hey, I'll play nice with the party. I'll join with American foreign policy goals. But we have to understand that things are moving this direction, and I'm the one that can kind of save you, like Obama said.
Yeah, for AOC, if any concern I would have with AOC would just be like inability to push back or control any far left people. Just from everything I've seen and heard of her, I don't think she's like a subversive actor. And then I know that these nuances get lost on my audience sometimes because people will hear me say one thing, people in my community sometimes even think I think that like Josiah now I guess is like a secret tanky or whatever. I don't think he is. My concern is less for. At this point, my concern is less like I think this person is a subversive actor who is harboring, whatever communist ideas, and she's hiding them from everybody, versus she's just not able to push back on it, or that's like my worry. But my main worry isn't even really about AOC right now. I think it's more related to, I would say Mamdani and his recent endorsements, although AOC might have endorsed all the same people in New York. Yeah, I think that kind of
Bernie
worries me.
did not endorse like the one that is like Daria Liza that is in favor, like she's openly just the entire national DSA platform. AOC did not endorse, Bernie did not endorse, but I've said that to members of liberal communities, and they've said that, well, Mamdani and AOC are playing an inside-outside game, and Zoran's going to take hits for AOC politically, and that's why AOC did not endorse Grant Plattner and all these other candidates. And I just don't know if I know there's coordination. I just don't think AOC believes her political goals are benefited from having Daria Liza in Congress.
Yeah, I think I'm sympathetic to that argument as someone who hates communism and all secret planning, but I feel like too much is leaked from AOC, unless those are strategic, where she's, I think, expressed frustration with some of these people that I would have a hard time believing that there's some secret coordination going on behind the scenes. It seems like she does have a lot of genuine frustrations with these people. Yeah, like a lot of what you're asking me, again, like to reframe it this way, and it comes back to this like kind of macro perspective, like getting infected with a disease is in some ways a good thing because your immune system responds, and then you build immunity to it, and then your body is better, ideally, hopefully, moving forward. But if you have no immune system, the disease just kills you. My issue is that, like when you talk about like the data center thing, or I mean, obviously Israel-Palestine is a big thing. Like in a perfect world, you have a population that is starting to feel stronger feelings towards the Palestinians and negative feelings towards the Israelis, and the Democratic Party, at least to the population, seems to be unresponsive to the change in the voter base. So you get somebody like the DSA that is able to seize upon that more. In an ideal world, your Democratic establishment looks at that, and then they take that feedback, and then they kind of adjust going forward, like, okay, well, this is going to be our party's stance on this. But the Democratic Party's just complete and total inability to, coordinate messaging or to get anything out or to show voters that they even are responsive to the changing needs of the people is just so bad that, I don't see that process happening. And I feel like it primes us for kind of like a radical party takeover. Like all the examples that you gave earlier, like something to do with data centers or something to do with was allowing you give another example for a policy thing, but like these are
like
things
stock buybacks.
Yeah, stock buybacks. Yeah, like there are certain things that like I tend to focus on like a policy side of like you'll hear me say a lot like, oh well, I don't know if this will actually do anything for raising revenue for the government, blah 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 blah, and it's like that is true, but I'm not like fully opposed to. Let's say that you have somebody that comes in and like, we're going to fully fund the IRS. We're going to roll back the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. These are going to be things that are going to raise, fucking $500 billion a year additional government revenue. And we're also going to put a special 2% income tax or a 2% like capital gains extra tax if you have a net worth over $1 billion, our billionaire tax, right? So like you feed a little bit to the populace, you feed a little bit to the society that's like, oh, finally the billionaires are getting a tax. It's not going to raise much money effectively. I don't like it in terms of like an economic policy, but in terms of like a good political signaling policy, I think that stuff like that is okay. But I think you have to be very careful when you play that game because you can give in too much to the sloppy-list urges and then you're not doing good policy anymore. You're just like trying to appease a rabid public that doesn't even know what it's asking for, or it's asking for things that are ultimately going to be ineffective. Yeah.
What message do you think? Did you see the Massey vote or the Massey amendment that Nancy Pelosi voted for that takes away all funding from Israel? Do you make anything of like Nancy Pelosi? That's a big one that changed on that vote. What do you think that's a sign of?
Of Massey joining a removing funding to Israel thing.
Massey, it was called the Massey Amendment. So he added to our last like funding bill that all aid of all kinds would be taken away from Israel. And Nancy Pelosi voted for it. She said it's a flawed amendment. You don't got to use a battering ram or whatever to do the job of a more precise tool, whatever. But she voted for it to send a message. I'm wondering if you have an idea where that message is going. If Nancy Pelosi is even saying like, I'll vote for a Thomas Massey amendment that cuts all funding from Israel.
Well, I mean, like right now, it seems like there is a growing fervor amongst the voters relating to Israel that the party, from my outside perspective, and I mean, we follow politics more than 99.99% of the average American, right? I think that it feels like the Democratic Party is not responsive to where the voter base is right now on Israel. So maybe this is her way of signaling to the public of like, okay, well, we hear you and we do need to do something dramatic about this. I don't know. I guess that's how I would view it, because the Democrats seem to have a hard time making voters understand that, like, okay, we hear you on this issue and we're going to do something about it. It seems like the Democratic Party has a message on that. That would be my impression. I don't know. Has Pelosi said anything differently, or do you have a different impression on that? Or
I think that Pelosi is in. I mean, she's leaving soon. I think she's and Jeffries voted against it. Pelosi voted for it. So I wonder if there's any disagreement there. I have heard some reports that although Pelosi was supportive of Jeffries, that she's not like extremely happy with how he's decided to lead the House. I think she's kind of giving permission to Democrats to take a more anti-Israel position in the future. And that permission from a party leader is going to be pretty big moving forward in our future elections. And like Rahm Emanuel is talking about Israel paying for their own stuff and like putting everyone in the West Bank in a camp or whatever they're talking about.
Sure.
So I think that is just like a necessary move for Democrats politically. But the question moving forward really is, so you identified this problem. You identified some commentators who are, and just for context for your audience. So I've been involved in like voting, like pro voting rights nonprofits. I've worked for those, running like statewide programs. I'm a member of like my local Democratic committee. Worked in public policy, all that kind of stuff. So my goal and my role in these conversations is I'm pretty antagonistic towards the far left and what I consider to be the deep center in the party. I think both can learn from each other and both can push each other to be better. So my goal isn't to have like screaming matches all the time. So my reaction to reposting you, and this happens all the time, obviously, when you actually talk about it, it's not the same venom in it. It's just like, what the hell are we gonna do? And that Shervin guy, I don't think he did a good job explaining necessarily what the goals he was advocating for were, but what the hell should he do? What should we all do? What do you recommend your followers, your viewers do when they're organizing? They join a college Democrat, they join DSA. Do you want Pisco to just go nuclear against the populace? Do you want him to just criticize a little bit? Do you want Josiah to cover them? Like, what is your prescription moving forward? Because I am genuinely kind of confused about exactly what you recommend there.
Yeah, so I guess, right now there is a lot of friction online. If I say something bad about somebody to the left of me, I know that Hassan's fan base is going to strike out. I know that comment sections are going to be a little bit more brutal. Other commentators might come out and take a statement against me. There is a structure set up that alerts me that when I push to my left, there is going to be kind of like a social cost or something incurred. I wish that same type of structure could also be set up and enforced by center-left libs when I feel like people on the left have pushed like too far left. So if it comes out that people are saying things akin to, I guess we could debate these, like statements that are just too far gone for a candidate. So for instance, like for El Sayed, if this is somebody that I wanted to support, or here, let me ask you just a quick, do you agree that there are statements that you can make and you can still vote for somebody in a general, and there are statements that you probably can't make and still reasonably expect people to want to support somebody in the general? So for instance, I do believe this. I think I'll say it. I think definitely lies when he talks about like his physician background. I just think that's a blatant lie. However, I don't think that's disqualifying. I just think it's a stupid lie that he's telling to hype himself up. But if I were to say, I really do believe El Sayed is probably going to try to usher in Sharia law to the United States if he has the opportunity to. if I say the doctor thing, I could tell my fan base is like, okay, he's better than Roger, he's better than the Republican, like vote, we're voting for Saeed. But for the Sharia law thing, that's a much harder one in my mind to come back from. Do you agree that there's a difference between those two types of statements in kind, or do you think that it's just like, well, you can always support him in the general no matter what you say in the primary?
Yeah, I do agree. And an example from the center for anyone who's on the left watching would be like Kirsten Gillibrand when she's like the leader, one of the leaders of the DSCC, one of the most popular or most powerful Democrats in the country. And she called Zoran a radical jihadist the moment he won the primary. So that's a good example of it from the other side.
Jesus. Yeah. So all that to say is that like, I wish there was a way to enforce like some kind of, and again, I don't know if it's a social cost basically by, giving disfavorable coverage to, or calling out when people on the left are just going a little bit too far when it comes to bashing any moderate candidates. So from my perspective, from a media perspective, it's going to be like, well, who do I collaborate with? Who do I give friendly interviews to? Who do I cover negatively? Who do I call out publicly in order to kind of like push them in a different direction? Like those would be the kinds of things that I can do,
Yeah, I get that. Let me think for a second.
Do you think some politicians? I'm asking you this because a lot of the critique will be pointed in my direction for, well, how do you message this? Not perfectly. You're not asking for perfection or anything, but I'm kind of curious because it seems like sometimes I wonder if the other side agrees. Do you agree that like this one-sided kind of like back and forth is not conducive? If I'm like a moderate to far, I don't know what the fuck I would fall right now or whatever, but if I'm like a moderate left lib, and that's the thing that I feel strongly about, but I also am okay with further left people being in my party, do you think it's fair for me to feel like this is unworkable if I feel like I can never hold any of them accountable for being destructive to the party, but they can hold me infinitely accountable for not supporting their people? Do you think it's fair for me to feel like that's not a sustainable dynamic?
Yeah, and with like chorus, that's a good one to bring up. They do have these symbols and signs to bring up where it's like, oh, that person's paid by chorus. Although chorus is a pretty typical structure for a political like nonprofit or whatever it's considered. I don't know if it's a C4 or whatever it's technically considered.
I think it's one of the hybrid entities or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, hybrids. And it's like, that's very normal. And if anything, progressives should be emulating that on the left. Like freaking Hassan himself could fund that for 15 creators on the left easily.
Yeah.
And instead of replicating it and getting better, they just want to make conspiracy about it. And that's an issue right now. And it is with the media environment. Every media on TV. And that's one reason why this is such a tough discussion. Because no matter what, the left is going to be the center of attack, whether it's the far left or the liberal left. So they'll be focusing on our one Daria Liza, who is the example of like a crazy, Democrat, open borders, whatever. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Republicans, for every one person we have, they have dozens of actual child rapists, of actual child abusers. Like Max Miller beating the shit out of his wife, breaking his like granddaughter's like collarbone or something. And his wife is the daughter of Bernie Moreno, a Republican senator. And Max Miller is up for re-election as a Republican. No one's covering that shit whatsoever. And that's been my frustration, where it's like, we need to cover that. And I almost feel like the Brian Tyler Cohen, Josiah method of just like not addressing the far left, letting them crash and burn on their own and become liberals as the reality hits, is almost better. Like if we attack the DSA all the time, that builds their group identity. And if someone like Hassan or DSA can use these races where we have more weak moderates to make progressives look good, that's also going to give them a leg up. So I feel like that's why I think this is a necessary process,
feel like,
but
I
it's
guess
really hard
one
to
of the
contest
issues
with.
that I have is it doesn't feel like the negative coverage is helping much more. Like, do these Republicans care that much? Like,
really
is there much more?
So, yeah.
Is there much more negative coverage that is actually pushing them to feel like? At this point, I don't know. Just it feels like it's not doing as much. And then the issue, I guess, the fear that I have is that, like, I agree that, like, I'm not saying that we need to be the 24/7 lefty bashing channel. And right now I maybe even do more of this than I would want to. Although it's hard when Hassan's calling me a sex pest, molesting, rapist every single fucking day on the stream. It's hard not to pay some mind to that. And it has benefited me personally to cover it more personally, because my personal reputation, as much as it might seem not, has actually improved in a lot of other ways because I'm addressing this more forwardly. I I feel like the inability to address the far left at all, like, again, I agree that it's not like we should be attacking them constantly, but the inability to address them at all, I feel like it leaves moderate voters not sure of who you are or where you stand. Because if I were to ask a moderate voter, if I were to ask them anything about the far left, like, well, what do you think the DSA stands for with regards to capitalism? It's like, oh, well, they think it sucks and we need like dramatic changes and everything. It's like, well, what about like housing? Well, they think that housing should probably be a right, or we should have mass rent control. Like, I almost wonder if an average person, it's hard because I don't even know if the average Dem even knows what the DSA is, honestly. But I almost feel like for people that even know what the DSA is, they could rattle off more DSA positions than they could moderate Dem positions. I don't even know if I could rattle off moderate Dem positions. I actually just don't know.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and I feel like our inability to have an identity in part stems from our inability to fight kind of like the far left. Because when you fight the right, well, we know that we're anti-Trump, but like, what are we in actuality? And it's like, I don't know, like, well, we think that the Israel-Palestine thing is not good. And it's like, oh, so you want to defund and abandon entirely the state of Israel because that's the DSA position. It's like, well, I don't want to say anything about that position because I can't say anything bad about the far left people. Like, it feels like a lot of the problems that we have with the Democratic Party, that somebody like you would say, well, here's problems that we have that we need to work on. I feel like those are downstream sometimes from our inability to push against the further left wing in the party. And again, not necessarily to like trash them, although at this point it feels like that's kind of the back and forth we're in. But like, I see, it would be nice if there was a world where you have DSA people who are like, we're not going to support a single AIPAC anything candidate in the entire race. And then you've got moderate Dems who are like, I think that's definitely a step too far, but we're not going to support any Democrat who is in favor of even defensive aid to Israel if it's not tied to strong conditions. And that type of like tension and that type of back and forth would give voters like a very clear like, oh, okay, well, here's an extreme position on Israel-Palestine, and here's a more moderate position that's still opposite to Israel on Israel-Palestine. And now you have two poles to choose between, rather than I've got a DSA who has fleshed out positions and a Democratic Party who the conservatives say that they're the DSA and the DSA say that they're the conservatives, and I don't actually even know what they mean. Like, I don't know what they are. Like, which I feel like is what a moderate voter looks at the Democratic Party as sometimes. Like, I don't know what they even stand for.
I believe this is one of the issues I had, sort of with what you have been saying about this. So when I saw Kamala Harris during the 2024 cycle, and they would ask her questions about like transgender sports, and she would say, well, I'll follow the law in that state, or about immigration. I'm like, well, I wouldn't change from Joe Biden, but we do need a better immigration policy, or about taxing, or maybe I think her most effective messaging that I saw in my own in my experience talking to quote unquote swing voters was her price gouging talk. And I had some voters tell me, I had some voters tell me that they were going to vote for Trump, but they went to Taco Bell one day. And at the same time they went to Taco Bell, they're like, wow, these prices are high. And Kamala Harris was on the radio or whatever saying, I'm going to stop corporate price gouging. And he's like, oh, she's going to make my Taco Bell cheaper. And it's sad, but that's how a lot of voters think. And my big the danger here, in my opinion, is if we say, I saw a bunch of posts this week, and a lot of people on the liberal side from like your community will be like, oh, you're not on team lib, you're a commie, you're sweeping for them. And then on the left, I get called a Zionist and a Jew hater from every angle. And everyone was blaming the Democrats. There was a poll that said Democrats are still viewed as by 6 points as more radical than Republicans, as too far left. And it's like, that's insane. And that has been a problem before DSA. And I saw everybody blaming DSA when, like you said, it's correct that most people don't know what the hell DSA is. That's been a media problem. That's been a democratic messaging problem. That's been an issue with our affirmative messaging. And we look at Hunter Biden right now. Not everything he's done is great. I'm not very happy about the Flint testing. I think he kind of abused Hunter in that one and got a huge one up on him. I got more than a one up. That was really good for laundering Flint test. But in general,
I think it was Andrew's fault more than Hunter's. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, and putting that combo together was pretty irresponsible because he knows more about the internet than Hunter does. Hunter doesn't really know what the hell's going on. It's kind of unfair to him. But Hunter coming in and just allowing the Hunter Biden lies to be out there without addressing it directly has destroyed us. And it gives the leftist or the far left more credibility when they do come up and stand on business about something. Like we had Senator Mike Lee lie about Democrats getting fucking assassinated in Minnesota. And if Republicans had anything close to that with how much they use Charlie Kirk, like they would be talking about it every freaking day. They would force media coverage about it. They would not shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah.
And I did not see Democrats whatsoever talk about that when a sitting U.S. Senator, Mike Lee, made a conspiracy about that's actually Tim Walz' friend. Democrats should be pissed off about that and should be out there every day until the American public knows the freaking truth about that. Same with January 6th. We let these lies float in the open, and it's like, oh, well, eventually I think people will come to the truth. No, history does not bend towards the truth. We have to force it in that direction. And that's a big issue. If moderate Democrats and Democrats in general don't get an edge to them and fight on those grounds, then yeah, that's one reason why I support some DSA members taking out Democrats, because I need them to wake the hell up on what's happening.
I don't disagree with you at all, but I mean, I guess my argument would be that's what I'm trying to push as the wake up thing. And part of the wake up thing is that Democrats need to understand how the media works right now. MAGA understands it obviously really well, and I feel like the tankies all understand it pretty well. I think they've emulated the MAGA structure really well, and the liberals just haven't yet. You talk about like I see so many discrete parts trying to do what the MAGA and the tanky people do, but they don't all work together, so it doesn't work. So I think the closest example I can think of recently is there are all these clips right now of these senators or congressmen who are, or the senators who are farming clips on these appointees, these judges or whatever, who won't admit who won the 2020 election, right? I'm sure you've seen a lot of these, right? Who won the 2020 election? Well, Biden was certified the winner, all these judge appointments and everything, right? Those are things that, like, if a Republican was doing that, after the Republican farms the clip in the Congress, you would have Fox News running these same clips enough that all of the podcasters would start talking about these clips, and then everybody would see on the Republican side, oh my God, the Democrats don't support the 2020 election. Like, that's crazy. And but because it's on the Democratic side and the Democrats have no media apparatus of which to message from, they can't amplify that signal. So these clips basically start and stop when they show up on Twitter for a little bit, and then that's it. Same thing with the deaths of any lawmakers. Same thing with any misinformation about Hunter Biden that could be corrected. Like, all of this stuff just dies where it is because there's no amplification channel. And yeah, I mean, that's a big thing that I push for Democrats to get a handle on. I think that the lefties have a handle on it, but I don't think that the lefties are pointed in the same direction as us. So it makes me scared to see them understand it better than we do, because they're pointing in a direction that I'm very, very, very much opposed to. And I'm worried that by the time the libs figure it out, it's going to be a little bit too late. They're going to be like a sizable portion of the party that are now going to have to be contended with in a way that's going to make us all worse off.
Yeah, I guess that is where Israel-Palestine terminates a lot of the... So one big benefit Biden could have politically, like Kyle Kulinski says all the time, Joe Biden ended a Middle Eastern war, and it was bad because Trump made it be bad. Trump's planning for that.
Yeah.
And releasing the Taliban and the Afghanistan government, we pretty much abused them. And then Joe Biden had to come in, and it wasn't even, he had to delay it because it was such a shit position they were in. He had to delay it longer because he couldn't pull it out when Trump said we were supposed to pull out. Things were too bad. They had to, and we had like 13 allied countries there or some shit, and thousands, tens of thousands of people to get out. That was a huge historic accomplishment. And Joe Biden should get huge credit for that. And I've heard like Kyle say that. And then be like, well, Trump's war in Iran is 50 times worse, which it is a million. It's not even compared to any foreign policy decision in American history. It's in the Sports Center top 10. It's freaking crazy. And more Americans died. Republicans who drug out those dead soldiers, was it like 12 or 13 from Afghanistan?
In Afghanistan. Don't talk about the 18 dead in Iran or whatever now. Yeah.
Yeah, and they died in these operations laying in their bunkers, and Trump has disregarded it as getting headaches. And Pete Hegseth is complaining like, well, a couple drones got through, I guess, when we had U.S. soldiers dying. Yeah. But when like the left talks about it, it's like, well, Biden did end a Middle Eastern war, and Trump is causing way more, and Joe Biden decreased drone strikes by like 50% or some shit after Trump. Biden did really good there, but too bad the Zionist genocidal maniacs are here to destroy every child in Gaza. So like that is a big issue. And I do think there is a reality in which the part of the party that believes that Joe Biden was like insanely bad on Israel would be less if Joe Biden was a little bit better on Israel, because he was pretty radical, much more radical than Kamala would have been by every indication we have from like background reports about Kamala's allies and how they would have approached the Middle East different. But it does terminate any benefit Biden could have. But I do agree with what Josiah said about it's
what do you mean by
good.
I'm just curious, what do you mean by radical when you say Biden was kind of radical?
I would say that being unwilling to, and I know they sanction some West Bank settlers under Biden.
They might have. I do think Biden put a decent amount of pressure on on Netanyahu for things. I feel like the Rafah invasion was a really big thing. Trying to build that port, I guess it disintegrated in 3 weeks, but they tried, I guess.
Yeah, they tried.
One thing that sucks, and I understand we're not allowed to, say that sometimes the job is tough, but like Trump, sorry, I'm venting for 20 seconds because you probably agree with most of this. It bothers me so much. Trump came in off the back of an Obama economy that was booming, and he had nothing to worry about for 3 years. The fourth year was COVID, and as a result of COVID, everybody says that the fourth year doesn't count. Biden had 10 years of COVID in 4 years of being the president. He had the COVID stuff, and then he had two of like the largest conflicts of our era exploding under his presidency, while dealing with COVID, while dealing with all of the inflation and everything that came, off the end of that, and the global supply shock and everything else going on. And it sucks so much that every single huge problem like ended up in Biden's administration. And if he didn't have like the perfect fucking solution for everything, like I think that a lot of it could have gone a lot worse. Like people don't mention Biden did pressure Netanyahu for a lot. Biden did get more hostages released than Trump did. He didn't get any credit for it, obviously. I do think that the United States was good in the beginning of the Ukraine war, that we were just declassifying information, off the cuff in the weeks preceding, saying like, hey, Russia's going to invade Ukraine. Everybody should be aware of this. Yeah, it just sucks that he had so much to do with it in his administration. And then it sucks for Kamala running for president. And it really is just so bad. Being the VP and running for president is so rough because you have to put out strong positions because Americans are always unhappy now. So you have to show how you're going to be different from the last administration while not distancing yourself so much because it's like, hey, you're the vice president now. Like, what the fuck is going on? Even though the VP can't do much. Like, it's a weird position to be in. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could tell me, I don't know if you've done this before, but one thing I would like to hear from creators like you and other liberals, your fan base is very reactive to discussions about like Bernie, for example, to say like Bernie has had this long career, no bills in his name, which I think we need to give some credit. And I'm speaking from a little bit further to the left, what Bernie was able to do. So I spoke earlier about like AOC getting people on her side in the party and then leveraging that for political concessions or changing things. So Bernie Sanders, there's a whole list of things where Bernie did not cry when he lost these elections. He did cry. Okay, he did cry. All right, he did cry, but he still came around and did some of the highest number of events for Kamala and Hillary. And all the stats we have from voter rolls and election data shows that Bernie did help us drive out turnout, and his voters did come out for the Democrat. And as a result, Bernie Sanders did defend Biden's domestic policy very strongly. In the IRA, for example, like Bernie got the Medicare drug price negotiation. He was a big influence in that. He wanted to go further, but he couldn't with Sinema and Manchin, with the cap for insulin for Medicare, inflation rebates, and historic green energy investment. I'm looking at the AI list, obviously. Bernie pushed for a 15% corporate minimum tax, which almost got in these bills. So Bernie was able to use the leverage from his cycles to still support Democrats and push them in a way that's more successful for progressive causes to make the world a better place. And I do think that whether you join DSA, whether you watch Hassan, whether you're in all these different in the center or left of the party, I do think a majority of Democrats are decent people, are good people who have similar goals, but there's some issues that are going to make us like yell at each other, and that is going to be planned by people like Hassan or whoever else is going to want us to argue and debate instead of making lives better for Americans. I just think giving credit to Bernie instead of saying, oh, he's in Congress forever, he didn't get anything done. I mean, it's normal for someone who's an independent to not have bills in their name directly. If you're in the Democratic Party or Republican Party, like Mike Johnson, if you look through the legislative profile this year, he has given a bunch of Republicans random ass bills to sponsor for their elections. If you're a competitive Republican, you might not have anything to do with a piece of legislation, and Mike Johnson will give you something so you can go back to your district and say, hey guys, like reelect me to this seat because I got this passed. And that happened with like a few like New York Republicans. So try to give some credit to progressive movement, because you can then say to us, like, this is how you can use progressive politics and like a semi-populist rhetoric and populist movements into creating real change to reform the system in a social democratic way.
Attack against Bernie to say that well, he only has what's the common attack, it's like he's only renamed some post offices or whatever, like that's true on a technical level. I think when I give that pushback, it's usually against people who I think sometimes have a bit of a delusional view of like, we can get a few lawmakers in and literally change the United States, or Bernie Sanders is this revolutionary figure and he's pushing the United States in all these directions legislatively or whatever. It's like, well, no, like these are happening longer term on a party level. Like it would be stupid to say that Bernie Sanders is not one of the most influential senators in my lifetime, at least. Like it would be pretty dumb to not say that. I think one of the big problems though, and this is a thing that like I've realized in time as a creator, is I have the ability to maintain a lot of relationships with a lot of different people without enforcing any standards or norms on them. And oftentimes in my past, this would lead to kind of some big catastrophic burnouts, because when I'm not enforcing standards on people around me, they end up acting in kind of like insane ways. And even if I'm open to a lot or can deal with a lot, it causes so much clash and tension between people in my vicinity that it just, people burn out or crash out. It just can't, it's not a maintainable state of affairs. Bernie Sanders, for all of what you just said, I don't think I ever heard Bernie engage in rhetoric that made it impossible for anybody listening to him in good faith to feel like, I can't vote for Hillary, I can't vote for Biden. Like, Bernie's right. Like, this person is an AIPAC Jewish pro-genocidal shit. Like, I've never heard Bernie engage in rhetoric like that. And, you know, to what you say, I'm pretty sure Bernie has always pretty adamantly been behind the Democratic candidate for president. That's been my understanding. I think he also joined AOC when she was behind Biden. I think before he even dropped out, I believe Bernie was still behind Biden. And I think he said as much publicly. So I agree with that. But man, I feel like so many people who are toxic, horrible people spun out of the Bernie camp. And that's concerning to me. Do you think that's a fair statement or no?
I mean, Brianna Joy Gray is a good example of someone that's like so toxic. Like she's running anti-vax rhetoric now, saying she's vaccine injured and all that crazy shit. I think it comes with the territory of any populist, conspiratorial sounding rhetoric. Although Bernie is like stressing peaceful revolution through liberal reformist means. I do agree he's brought in some political actors that do not have the same, like the Vanguard, for example, who are just like, they have genuinely just like dumb takes on things. Like I genuinely don't think some of these channels understand what they are saying, or like Crystal Ball. I don't know if she understands how campaign finance actually works. And my appeal to them is like, hey guys, can you learn what the hell you're talking about? Because I think that if they do ever teach themselves, they would, you might just think they're bad faith. Do you think the negatives from Bernie are bad faith, or are they ideologues?
Do I think of the what?
Influencers? Like the negative effects that you see coming in from progressives, is it mostly do they mean well? I know you don't think like the Vanguard or Brown and Joy or some of them mean well, but would you say like do you think Bernie Sanders had a majority, like if you had to give a percentage to it, like a positive versus negative influence on like Democratic turnout to help Democrats win? Like, do you think he's positive for Democrats, or
just on a numbers and statistics game, I would have to assume, based on the normal voting population, that it's always going to be positive. That like, even if if Hassan Piker could push a button and turn out 100% of his audience to vote, my guess is even that would be positive for Dems in the general, just because a huge percentage of these people are still going to vote for the Democrat no matter what, would be my assumption. I'm almost certain that's true. I think this is borne out a lot there's a lot of fear-mongering over Bernie supporters aren't going to vote for Hillary in the general, and like 5% of them went to Trump or whatever, but there's always like some small percentage of people that kind of like move around, but it wasn't like a huge percentage or anything. But that being said, the other question too is a hard one. I don't know on what level you mean. Like, do you think these people are operating in good faith? Like, I would have to assume that people like Brianna Joy Gray are doing what they think is best for the country, as opposed to like just being intentionally. But then even like some subversive people, I would hope, I don't know about Hassan because he's a clout monster, but I would hope that even people who are being subversive think that a communist United States or a socialist takeover would be ultimately benefiting most people. So I guess I don't know what you mean by in good faith, like intentionally lying or doing things to destroy the United States, or what do you mean by good faith, I guess, when you ask that question?
Like when going to the voter booth, they'll ultimately make a decision because they'll see that Republicans are worse than Democrats, and in the very end they'll make that pragmatic decision in the end. And I think even independent of like a Bernie or AOC, you would have to ask that question. Like if you have Bernie and AOC leading these movements, then you have like Hassan like not supporting the Democratic nominee, but you have Bernie and AOC, they are supporting Democrats, and Zoran are supporting Democrats. I think as long as those elected officials keep in that line, then we'll have people working in a well-meaning manner to affect positive change at least.
As long as they are supporting Democrats, Yeah, but when you allow more radical elements to come in and you don't check them, I think that those radical elements, it goes back to that mechanism I talked about earlier. You create this like one-way treadmill where it's okay to push left, but it's never okay to push against the left. And in that circumstance, the only thing that can happen is that far left, the extreme wing, just grows and it never gets checked, and they can only take from your moderate left. And that I really wish that there was a way to eliminate, like if that one-way treadmill didn't exist, I think I would feel so much better. Yeah, I just think I would feel so much better about the state of affairs. Does that feel like a valid concern? Or do you think it's a totally, it's just not that relevant, or it's a thing you shouldn't care about that much?
Where do you see the influence being gained at? Because if they cannot win any seats other than plus 50 districts where the incumbent doesn't campaign and they give up on politics in general because they're just like lazy, if they can't win anything competitive, I guess Wisconsin and Michigan can change that. Where do you see the influence growing at that concerns you so much? Or is it online or what?
Well, so in one case, I see their ability to, so there's a couple things. So these are peripheral. They can always be used by Republicans in attack ads against the Democrats, which can be annoying. I don't know how much of an impact it'll have. It depends on how crazy the statements they make are. Like, I don't know about calling Obama a communist. That seems kind of goofy. But if you have somebody who's like actually a communist, then maybe it feels less goofy at that point. Maybe those attack ads become more beneficial. And then a second thing is the people in these like safe blue areas use their power to mess with other primaries for Democrats across the country. And they're always fighting from very safe areas. So they're never really at risk. So they can be as crazy as they want to be. So I would say that like the Justice Dems presence in the Democratic Party immediately following their elections for a couple of years felt pretty negative. So like AOC and a couple, and like Ilan and Rashid Tlaib, they were being really aggressive towards other Democrats across the country, but they were doing it from a very safe area. And that felt very obnoxious and annoying to deal with. And I wonder sometimes how much this played into like the defund the police and everything rhetoric that felt safer to engage in, that ultimately I think going to hurt us in that election cycle. I think a second thing is that we're not at that point yet, but if we get to the point to where they have enough seats, I don't know, 5 or 10, all of our margins are so close everywhere, where these people can get legislative caucuses where they can start to threaten legislation. That's really scary to me, because now maybe there might be things that would be good to push. Like, I think that so for pragmatic foreign policy reasons, it's really hard to move me off of should the U.S. support Israel in some way. I think we should. Same thing with Saudi Arabia, though, and I have the same position on both. It's just because I don't want to fully give up influence on the Gulf. That being said, Israel is obviously a massive pain point for the United States. It makes us look bad. It fucks with the whole Middle East. Like, there should be way more pressure applied to Israel from the United States. Let's say that there was some bill or something, and it was like, here's, conditionally providing Iron Dome relief to Israel on the contingency that, these conditions are met in the West Bank or the Gaza Strip or whatever else. Like, I think that would be beneficial legislation for everybody involved. It would help the United States. It would help our foreign policy goals. I think it would help Israel, and it would help their society. And I think it would help the Palestinians, and I think it would help their well-being. And I think it would help stabilize like our presence in the Middle East and Israel and Saudi Arabia and everybody else. I think it would help everybody. But I could see DSA members tanking that, saying, no, we're not supporting genocidal apartheid freaks. We're not doing this. And then they pull the plug on that. That would be really bad. And then a final small thing would be, I think structurally, we're getting deeper and deeper into a world that is just not favoring moderates. So like I mentioned a lot that the gerrymandering, I think, hurts moderate left Dems, because you're not ever gerrymandering us out of, you're never going to gerrymander a DSA person out of their seat. But one thing I hadn't considered before, somebody emailed me this actually to talk about this, is you can gerrymander them into seats, because when you gerrymander, not only are you getting rid of some Democrat seats that they might have been able to win otherwise, you're creating like deeper partisan districts. So a district that was like 55% Dem, 45% Republican is probably going to produce a more moderate Democrat than a district that's like 70% Democrat, 30% Republican. So like they enjoy that structural advantage as well. So it's just like, yeah, there's a lot of these like things that are, I feel like, kind of pernicious in the background or in the foreground that are working that scare me about DSA presence in the party. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you think that Marjorie Taylor Greene and like Lauren Boebert had a huge impact on MAGA, or was that more of just because I feel like that's more of a party wide thing? The right wing already had that religious fanaticism or like the cult mentality, whatever the correct words are to describe that, in their party, and the religiosity built in, the idolatry. I just don't feel like that's possible on the left. I feel like there's too much debate. We have all these diverse communities coming together. We're not all white Christian males. Doesn't that provide us a natural defense, so we don't need to really worry about them coalescing too much power?
Wait, so you think that like MTG and Lauren Boebert, you think that these people weren't big spokespeople or didn't have a big impact on the Conservative Party?
I don't really know because they were huge prominent voices, and Trump was still able to come back, and we had crazies running like Pennsylvania, and Josh Shapiro beat them by 20 points, but then Republicans still won't vote for Democrats in Pennsylvania after that even. So we have moderate Democrats representing Pennsylvania, but we still see the same views of Democrats as being radical socialists when we have Josh Shapiro as our he's very moderate, very moderate. I mean, half of his cabinet has freaking like Republicans in it, and
I feel like
Republicans still have that framework.
I feel like part of the view, and this is another reason why I push for pushback. I feel like part of the view of why the Democrats are perceived as being more radical than they are, though, I think comes from the inability to ever see them push back on anything. Like, I remember this when we were all living through like peak woke. That part of the issues weren't like crazy trans people being 50% of the Democratic Party. It was like a trans person would say just some totally outlandish, crazy shit, and you wouldn't see any Democrat Party person ever push back on it. And I feel like that always led to the impression of, man, maybe the Democrats are actually way more radical and extreme like the conservatives say they are, which is another reason why I feel like we should be able to push back a little bit more on some of these people. Yeah.
I think so. My position against the further left and also the deep center in the party. So I've been my TikTok videos about Jasmine Crockett have been getting like hundreds of thousands of friggin' views and so many comments calling me a dumb white boy. But like Jasmine Crockett, for example, is currently saying like you should be working with your people, referring to white people, and you need your accountability for your community. And she promised to campaign for Tyler Rico before the primary was over, and she walked that back. She's no longer going to campaign with Tyler Rico. She did not make an official endorsement. So in the same way, I've gotten comments about like that topic, in the same way that I would get comments about Israel Palestine, about the far left. If I say I think there should be like a two-state solution, and like it makes no sense that these illiberal countries would make a liberal country in any makeup whatsoever. And then I'll have the same strong pushback from land acknowledgements, and pronoun class, which in my experience with a nonprofit, a voting rights nonprofit I'm not with anymore, but we had literal like white accountability groups. Like we had a meeting where it was the white people in one room and then non-white people, and white people like apologized for racial microaggressions. I was told personally at one point, and that person was no longer with the org, but that I could only supervise the white fellows or the interns that we were working with, because and that actually did happen, and that does happen. And in the same way, the pushback I would give there, if I would say we shouldn't do land acknowledgements all the time, we shouldn't do mandatory pronoun announcements, I usually just say like, hey, tell us what you want us to know about you. If we're in a group, we don't gotta say like go down the whole list of things. I had someone tell me they had yummy pronouns, and they changed their pronoun every day based off their mood. Like this actually does happen in progressive organizations sometimes. But in the same way, it's that same ideological pushback where it's like, this is not popular for the party. And in my Democratic experience organizing with Democrats, it'll be like, we have a swing state senator that won his race, and he voted with Republicans against trans athletes in sports. He's still pro-trans rights in general, but the trans sports bill, in this district, he cannot vote against that bill to ban it, in Pennsylvania. And he was getting flamed by all the local Democratic parties. So in the same way, taking like unpopular positions and more radical positions from the left of the party when it comes to economic issues or socialism, there is an issue with like social and cultural topics that we need to moderate as well. Do you agree with those criticisms? I feel like most voters view Democrats as radical because of those things, versus I don't think most voters know economic policy that deep.
Say they feel like the Democratic Party has gone too far left or whatever, I think that they are like exclusively responding to their feelings about trans people. I don't think it's because they feel like that we've all become socialists or whatever. 100%. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm trying to think. Oh no, yeah, go ahead.
No, I think we went
Or
through.
I guess, well, no, here, actually, well, I guess
different-
I'll say something on that. I guess when I view the woke stuff, I think that lacking the corrective mechanism in a party, this is a huge conjecture, but lacking the ability to push back, I think, on the woke stuff to some extent is kind of how we got, not to pull a conservative card out, but like it's kind of how the big conservative pushback was able to be so powerful, because they were able to message that so many liberals and Democrats were extremist, like crazy, whatever people, is because if you were to say during the whole like the uber woke era, if you were to have this feeling that the average Democrat wants, to trans all your kids or whatever bullshit, and you've got all the Republicans saying that, if you were to look and it's like, okay, well, what do Democrats actually think about this? If you were to try to look in the Democratic Party for their thoughts on it, you will find absolutely nothing pushing against any of that perspective, which I think is a little scary. And I think because of that lack of pushback, like I don't think the Democratic Party became so radical that you had no choice but to vote for the Republicans. But I think that the Democratic Party allowed itself to appear that radical because of their unwillingness or inability to push back against those further left positions. And then that's kind of what made us vulnerable to the wacky conservative shit that we're in right now.
In my experience, especially with this current discourse I've been a part of, it's been a lot of like asking, hey, what is James Tallarico doing that is offensive or not enough to reach out to black voters? And a lot of the comments really are just, it's not my job to educate you. And
Sure.
It's a lot of white privilege language, and all these academic terms, whether it's for the economic issues or for social issues, are really just they sound terrible to any normal person, not normal, whatever, if any person is not in the in group, it sounds really bad. And that's probably why Democrats are so fragmented, because if you're in a coalition of Democrats, as a Democrat, you must advocate for every minority group combined. You must advocate for every type of whatever class issues combined. Republicans can just say, like, I hate poor people, I want to kill black people, and we're going to cut taxes for the wealthy so I can eat more on my mega yacht. And people still vote for them if they can talk about like killing babies and trans athletes.
Sure.
So we do have that burden to carry.
I will say,
I'm not sure
just
if any
as
of our communities are the ones that do that, but
just curious, do you live in Texas, or where are you from, or do you not say?
I'm
what
from
state?
Pennsylvania.
Oh, one thing that I got, I think that maybe furthers my argument a little bit relating to kind of the wacky far lefto people or whatever, the online stuff, is somebody emailed me who they claim to have worked on the ground. I don't remember if it was for Tallarico or for Crockett's campaign, but they said that they felt like the online conversation is the thing that had poisoned the discourse so much, because hold on, I'm trying to see where this guy, I think he was a Crockett, I think he worked on Crockett's campaign, or he said he was a staffer for them. But he said that one of the issues was when you look at the Tallarico Crockett discourse, a lot of the most toxic discourse came from people online, and that part of the black feeling in Texas was this feeling of like the black lost, get in line and vote for the white now. And he said that on a local level, like Tallarico and his campaign didn't engage in anything even remotely close to that type of rhetoric. Obviously nothing to do with that, and that Tallarico has been super above board and respectful. He's been doing the I don't know if you call them town halls or whatever, where he's trying to take questions from black voters to assuage their feelings about that, but that a lot of it was kind of that more extreme discourse that had poured in on the national level online that was leading to voters having that takeaway feeling of things, is what this person said, at least.
Yeah, and they all assume if there's any comments about any criticisms, that the comments that are the most aggressive towards Crockett will be calling her too ghetto and too aggressive, which I need to spend a lot of time pushing back there as well, because you might be interpreted as joining those people, or those people might speak for your group if you don't attack them well enough on that end. But then you can make the same argument if someone is like attacking a liberal, if they have an opinion that's more moderate on Israel, Palestine. So it's hard being that person in these groups though, because being someone who like focuses on what's pragmatic on both sides, you're going to be accused of being on the other extreme. Whoever you're critiquing, you're going to be on the other extreme, obviously.
Sure.
And then you're ruining future opportunities with any campaigns, with any consulting groups, with any nonprofits. If someone is in the different part of the party, it's difficult work to bring everybody together, and it really is not like some random white guy from Pennsylvania's job to comment on black voters in Texas. But I try giving a broad criticism to everybody who loses and is a sore loser, whether it's Bernie or Abdul if he loses, or Haley Stevens if she loses. I just think we need to push back against that. Sure. Very aggressively. I
will say I looked at the Crockett stuff, and maybe there are other statements that she's made that I've just missed. I actually, because I assumed that Crockett was kind of being a sore loser, and that was not. I don't think that would be acceptable, especially for this Senate seat in Texas. But I felt like the big statement that I saw Crockett make was that she didn't. I think she said that everybody should support the Democrat on the ballot, but when she does her co-campaigning or when she goes out and campaigns for people, she's going to be focusing on the down ballot races. I mean, that seems like a fine position for me. I think no, or is Crockett campaigning for Tallarico really? Like, does Tallarico need that type of assist? Like, I feel like her putting her effort into down ballot races for candidates, I think is okay.
I would say that if you make a promise during the campaign that you're going to campaign all over the state for your opponent if you lose, it's kind of shitty to go back on that. And then at that Tallarico town hall, he did tell his supporters to keep Jasmine Crockett out of their mouths, and someone came up there and started listing off Twitter accounts that made them mad about Jasmine, and some of the Twitter accounts were like 500 follower Twitter accounts, and it is kind of, I saw some tweets that said it is kind of based to go to a political rally and ask the candidate to denounce every person that you don't like on Twitter with no relation to the campaign whatsoever. And Jasmine is very popular, very influential with black voters in Texas, so and black voters, there's not much discussion about this, but Clyburn just said that black voters let Kamala Harris down. And I saw some progressive or some leftists like Vosh complaining about freaking Afrocentrism or whatever the hell weird shit he's on. But like Trump did double his support with black voters in 2024 versus 2020. He did double his support with black voters. So there is something to be said about decreased turnout with black voters. And if the most popular black politician in Texas is going to be saying, like she responded to a like 30 like account on Threads of all places. They said, why are you sabotaging Tallarico? Which I don't agree with that language necessarily. She said, how can a loser, according to y'all, one who was completely awful and ran a shitty campaign, have so much influence? Get a grip and don't accept defeat. Go talk to, quote, your people, because they will be the ones not voting for him. You can make the difference. And most of the comments are saying, like, obviously, the white people are the problem, the brown people are the problem. And Jasmine did have that quote in the primary about, or not in the primary, but before the primary, where she said, we need immigrants because black people are done being slaves, which is probably a bad quote to use in a state with a very large Latino voting population.
Sure.
But
I
yeah,
do
it's
think
obvious
that one
that
of
she's
the
reading like online comments and getting upset by them.
True, although I think Crockett maybe should know better. But I mean, it's kind of funny in the exact opposite way of us being able to say, like, well, this is just a 500 follower account. This is online. Like, who cares? Like, I think in real life, people are affected by that stuff quite a bit, right? Like, people will lose their minds over a single person showing up at a town hall or like a Facebook post that's local or whatever. So, I mean, people do see that stuff. And then one thing that I think is a little unfortunate is the Democratic Party does have like a broad voting coalition, like a lot of people, but a lot of these people are sensitive to certain issues, especially racial issues. And populists, because I don't know if this is, I would have to think about this. It's probably not true, but the flavors of populism that exist today in the United States take on like a tinge more of like a Marxist or whatever bend, in that a lot of it or all of it is like exclusively kind of like class and elite focused, meaning that I feel like for a lot of the far left people now in the Democratic Party, we don't have any conversations about race anymore. And while we might have gotten a little bit too woke before, like far lefty people are in for a rude awakening, or anybody engaging in populist rhetoric is in for a rude awakening if they think that exclusively talking about class stuff is going to be adequate when it comes to addressing people's feelings about racial stuff in the United States. Like that, like the intersectional analysis, came about because it was a powerful way of understanding different perspectives, because not everybody just feels like, oh, I'm just a working class person or I'm just a poor person or whatever. Like there are different things that people have to be aware of when it comes to talking about people in the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is colored in America, and people need to be aware of that. Where when we talk about welfare, obviously that was the big thing, welfare queens. Welfare was okay if it's for West Virginia. It's not okay if it's for Philadelphia or a black area.
Sure.
And people on the left do disregard that completely. I do think it's a little bit like
just as a heads up, so people understand. When you say that, you're not saying that's actually true. You're saying that like this is how people view it. That like, oh, it's okay when it's
how
for
people view it.
Yeah. I'm just making sure so people understand. You're saying, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, but yeah, that's how people view it in America, and that's the same thing with Trump. Is people view Trump as on their team. So if Trump's being corrupt, a white man can say, "Well, Trump's being corrupt for me. He's doing it in benefit of me." So in the end, I could be blind to it and just accept it. And they call Barack Obama the most divisive president in American history. After Obama had to do eulogies for black people who were gunned down in a black church by Dylan Roof, like Obama brought the country together after that shit, bro.
Sure.
And it's like holy shit. The fact that Republicans say the opposite is crazy. But being hard on the left to message more on race issues, they do kind of disregard it, and that's not great either. Just to get back to, okay, are you in favor of? Do you think Chuck Schumer needs to go?
Um, I don't think I know enough to say. Like, my immediate feeling is yes, but I don't know if he's been involved in a whole bunch of like behind the scenes stuff that I'm just not aware of. That it's like, actually, no, Schumer's been really effective in terms of whatever. But one thing, when people look at, there's a thing I talked about the other day, when people are like really mad at Ken Martin, people are mad at Jeffries, people are mad at Chuck Schumer. And then people are saying like, well, whether or not they actually need to go doesn't matter. That what matters is the perception that they need to go. And like, that's what we have to deal with right now because the perception is so bad. But sometimes I wonder if, because of our inability to message at all as Democrats, we look to these other entities to like fill in what we feel like we're missing. And it's just not possible for people to get what they want out of these other entities. So for instance, like we've had so many conversations about Ken Martin and the DNC, but like what I'm thinking is like, how many people in this country have ever looked to like the DNC or the RNC ever to take a position or a stance on anything ever? Like even today, my guess is like less than 15% of Americans even know what like the DNC and the RNC are. But like, because we don't have any messaging anywhere else, this is the thing that people are focused on. And I kind of wonder if it's the same for Schumer and Jeffrey sometimes, where they want like a really strong, they want like a Bernie Sanders or like a Democratic Party spokesperson. And so they're getting mad anywhere they can, not realizing that they're probably just not going to get that from this position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think Jeffries is a good sign because Mom Donnie and I believe AOC, Brad Lander, they all co-signed Jeffries, but they also went against Schumer. So I think that kind of shows that there is something in the party happening where Jeffries is trying to rein in the DSA, the center of the party. Jeffries congratulated the DSA for the positions they won, and then through committee assignments and everything, you can meet the realism of politics at that point. Now Chuck Schumer, his influence, I would, if you want to blame anyone for Plattner, Chuck Schumer, other than the idiots that recruited him and didn't bet him at all, really. Chuck Schumer is the one that helped convince every other candidate to drop out for Janet Mills, and Janet Mills did not run a campaign whatsoever. Sure. Schumer is also the one that pressured the party, and you could argue what kind of pressure it is, whether it's money or influence, or it's probably just connections. But for Haley Stevens in Michigan, and she's a very weak candidate. If she really loses to Abdul by 10 points or more, then it's insane that she was even the candidate that the Schumer class chose. So he did support that as well, and he is giving way to the radical elements of the party that you are not a fan of, and I think that's one reason why people that support you would probably want to get rid of him. For Ken Martin,
sure. I will say for Schumer real quick, it's like
cohesion.
It does seem, regardless of any cope or any excuse you could make for Schumer, it does seem strange that Bernie Sanders, a senator from Vermont, seems to have more ability to support and nominate people, or not officially nominate people, but to like endorse candidates than Schumer would. That does seem to be like a failure on Schumer's part that I don't know how you rationalize that. So I think I would agree with that.
You get mad if Schumer, because he leads, I believe, the DSCC, so the official Democratic Senate committee with Gillibrand, and when they come out and support candidates, it seems like they're putting their finger on the scale and they represent the party. So Bernie does have the freedom to be an independent, to go out to these places and do whatever the hell he wants. But I do think there should be more politicians who advocate for who they want. But we did see like Jim Clyburn and everyone come up to support Haley Stevens. Now for Ken Martin, I would be concerned with just every organizer I know wanted Ben Wickler, like everyone. I don't know one person who wanted Ken Martin. Him getting picked was like a huge surprise to everybody I know. Everyone said, who the hell is this guy? We don't know who he is. We know like something about him, but he's not someone that we would ever give, our money to. That lack of confidence, the only way they ever appear in the news is when he's getting HR violations for throwing his phone at like the desk of junior staffers. He was on a Zoom call crying that he doesn't even want the job anymore because it's so difficult. The DNC had to put up their own headquarters for a $15 million loan as leverage or as collateral. So like, it's just like, at that point, but Ro Khanna is like in favor of Ken Martin for, they might want to run for president, so they want favorability.
I guess the big thing I look at when it comes to Ken Martin is, like sometimes I'll hear these, an Axios story or whatever, and it's always these unnamed people that are complaining that Ken Martin's not, meeting the moment or doing much. But then I'm looking, it's like, okay, well, why aren't people trying to like actually kick him out? And it's because it seems like there's nobody that's being offered as somebody who can step up and replace him. And when I see that, my feeling is less that these are failures of Ken Martin and more that it's like people are expecting the DNC to do something heroic or miraculous that like the DNC just can't do. It's the DNC. Like, I don't know if at any point in all of U.S. electoral history, well, maybe before I was born or whatever, where people are like, okay, like we're in big trouble as the Democratic Party. We need the DNC to step up and bail us out. Like, it's always, unfortunately for Democrats, it feels like it's always just been like, okay, well, who's the Democratic president? That's our leader right now. And as soon as they're gone, we're all going back to the drawing board because we have no consistent ideology or leadership in between elections is what it feels like to me.
Yeah, that's true.
Not to say that Ken Martin is doing a perfect job or that Wickler wouldn't have done better. My understanding is that Martin and Wickler both had impressive backgrounds in terms of like where they come from and what their accomplishments were. And then O'Malley did as well, although a little bit older. But yeah, I don't know what people are expecting the DNC to do. I'm not sure. And we've had good performances in all of our special elections, everything leading up to the moment we're at now. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, the DNC is going to come into more play after the midterms, and organizing the primary schedule and keeping everything in line with like state parties and supporting them and the mechanisms of running the primary and keeping our state parties together. They don't do as much with like county level parties or town level parties, but if there is low confidence now, I think that we have to do it sooner rather than later. We don't want to wait until 2027 or 2028. So if he is going to go, and there's reports that he jokes about it all the time, although his term is until like 2029. If he's not confident and he can't raise money, then, confidence and raising money are kind of the two main things you need for that position. So that's why I have that position there. Just to reiterate,
although I will say, so though, like wasn't the big fundraiser in the past for like the Democratic Party was Pelosi, and then for the Republicans it was I think it was Marjorie Taylor Greene were the huge like fundraising people that people could bring in so much money. So again, I'm just not sure. Like again, I'm never going to say we need a weaker DNC. And if there's somebody more capable of the job, and if somebody feels like they can be doing a better job, then I think 100%, yeah, we should obviously sooner rather than in the middle of the general election cycle or whatever. Should we be trying to push this? But I'm curious. Yeah, who's being floated for that position, and then like what are the big changes they would make where they feel like they can do a better job? I just haven't heard that spoken about as much, but.
Yeah, there's rumors that Ben Wickler might be looking to run for a Senate seat or something in 2028. So that's interesting. It is different fundraising structure. So we have more money going directly to candidates, directly to like Tallarico. And meanwhile, the RNC will have maybe like, I don't know, $200 million on hand randomly. The DNC is structured a little bit differently. But even in their leadership ranks, with the way they do their nominating conventions and everything, they have all those weird rules for like, we must have this. They have quotas essentially for race and genders of leadership there, which I don't have. I'm not 100% against anything like that. But there is a little bit there with leadership for the party that I think can change and make it more accessible. If I bring a random ass person to a Democratic Party meeting, they might get turned off if they have to acknowledge what land they're on, that we're also not going to give back to whoever it's owed to. And sure. Also we have to say their pronouns and talk about all that kind of stuff. And just to. The whole disagreement about this, it's one of those dumb, for everyone, for the audience, it's one of those dumb rhetoric, flattening conversations. I am not a malicious actor on the center or the progressive far left or whatever. I am against both sides. I'm with both sides. My issue was most of the DSA is normal ass people joining the DSA because Zohar Mamdani and Bernie Sanders, and everyone here libbing out too much and saying they're cancers who got to be cut out. And then anybody who has any disagreements at all, even on like Israel, Palestine, they might have some goofy beliefs anywhere. We can't just kick them out and be really thorny and be really unapproachable to those people. And I know you guys operate mainly online, but
I mean, I agree with that. I guess if I saw it in my subreddit, I mean, I would speak out against it if I see it. But generally, I feel like most of my criticism, or all of my criticisms, are usually focused on like the actual like leadership people. Like I think I still say pretty often, like I said in this conversation, that the average DSA member even is not like a hardcore fucking tanky commie or whatever. And even their form of, in their mind, like socialism really is probably just like Medicare for all and like a higher minimum wage or something. Yeah, I mean, if I saw a bunch of people in my subreddit who were saying like, like every single person who is like a part of the DSA or votes for Mamdani needs to be kicked out of the party, that would be obviously a ridiculous position. But I mean, I do think that unilateral permission structure is not sustainable, and it can't be that because they treat us as a cancer essentially that they need to excise, right? Would you agree with that? That like Kyle and Crystal and Emma and Matt and all these people basically see the Democratic establishment as people who are to be like rooted out, basically. Well, actually, I think Kyle and Crystal were just on a show where they even said that, like, yeah, these moderate Dems need to all be voted out of the party, basically. We can't bully them into our purest Israel-Palestine position.
Yeah, that's their goal. I think Kyle is still, I think he's not the worst ever, but I still don't like when I go and watch someone like Kyle's show and he starts it off with, I need your $5 donation. Your $5 donation is the only way we can run this platform. It's the only way we can reject corporate media. And I'm like, bro, you're like a multi-millionaire, bro. You got multi-million subscribers. You've been doing this for a long time. I see your views and you're still begging for money like you're a populist candidate, a populist media channel. Like I should be begging for money like that, not you, big bro. It's just like, it just doesn't, I just can't stand that posturing. Or even like the breaking points, they all are begging for all this funding. It's not like these shows are the most overhead cost intensive things to run, so I do get weird vibes sometimes. But I do enjoy Kyle a little bit. I don't enjoy Crystal as much, especially with the Ukraine takes. That's freaking crazy as shit, and the way she treats Democratic politicians with zero charitability whatsoever. But Kyle does segments with you, even like there's multiple Kyle segments in the past few months where he uses a clip of you and says how bad you destroyed MAGA. He might throw in there like, well, he sucks on Palestine in the same way that you say he sucks on Palestine, but you might say something somewhat positive. But he does do full segments about you. Do you feel a certain way about that? Do you think he uses it for his advantage then?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Which is why I try to be so careful when it comes to dealing with these people, because people will use my stuff to support their takes, but then anything that would be going against them, they would be completely and totally removed from. This is why, like, even at a time when Kyle was using quite a few clips of mine pretty positively, like, I think he would still avoid, like, any conversation whatsoever with me. But I think it's because he was worried that I was going to come on and give some type of, like, big populist pushback, like, or pushback against his kind of, like, populist ideas or whatever, so he would still avoid those conversations. But he's happy to show my clips when I'm bashing the right. And I'm sure if I would ever bash, like, the moderate part of the party, I'm sure he would absolutely love those clips as well.
I remember watching Hutch and Josiah on Crystal and Kyle and Friends, and the framing was liberal. I'll have to watch that again because they did go on there, like, I think last year. It was liberal versus leftist in that. I forget how hard they pushed back on Crystal and Kyle, but they have had influence. Unless do you think in that scenario they invite Hutch and Josiah on because they view it as commentators who will be too weak in responding to them?
Yeah, the same way that and that's not even a hit against them. Like, I think I served, unfortunately now I say retrospect, I think I served that same function for when I was debating conservatives in my kind of like nice conservative arc, like the string of Daily Wire debates I was saying in that era. Conservatives viewed me as like, okay, well, this is the liberal that we can bring on, and he's a really good debater and everybody knows it, but he's not going to be unhinged, so we can say that we've like given them a fair shake, and then we've had our like conversation, and then we can go back to talking about how immigrants and Haitians are like the source of all of our problems, and like we've done it. So I feel like, yeah, it's like I need somebody who's going to be oppositional in the way that, like, if you've talked to people, certainly you've heard this before, where somebody says like, yeah, you know, I'm not with Trump on everything, but, you know, I vote for him. And then when you ask, like, what are they not with Trump on? It's just like the most irrelevant sideshow shit ever. And it's like, well, what are you with Trump on? And it's like every single major policy point. And it's like, okay. Like, I think they're kind of looking for that, where it's like some pushback, but not like super big pushback that could frighten the audience too much.
Yeah, it's
and I think even part of that, when I talk about the one-way permission structure, part of that is even borne out by the conversations we've had, right? Where Josiah and Pisco both say, like, I need access to this platform because it can do good, and you seem to agree. And I mean, I agree that it does help to have access to that platform, but the people that are giving you access, they know the game they're playing and they're controlling everything. They know that they're bringing you on to show like a good guy, like, well, here are people that are moderates and we'll kind of debate with them, but they're not going to seriously push us because they know that they need access to this platform, but we can seriously push them, and we will continue to do so once they're off the show. So I just don't ever see where that moment comes from that you referenced before, where it's like, okay, but the reason why it's good to have access to these platforms is because when the time comes to make the big ask, then we can finally do it. Well, if they think you're going to do that, they just won't host you. That's also why I asked Pisco in his debate when he was like, well, you know, like these far lefties, like we can have critical conversations with them too. And I was like, what critical conversation have you had with a far lefty ever? And it was nobody, except for like the random small people on Twitter, like Ogre Boy or whatever.
Yeah, here's the meat of probably what our conversation was supposed to be. And when I see, do you not think there's any way that we have social creatures involved here? So like we know, like Cory Booker put out a video about how he worked with Lindsey Graham and they disagreed, but they like were friends and they were able to get some stuff done. Do you think that is there at all? So I see Kyle interacting very positively with Adam Mockler, with Isaiah Martin, with Josiah. He posts your videos sometimes. Positively with Peace Go, even with Hutch sometimes, at least a few months ago. Do you not think there's any chance at all that them being friends with each other in the same kind of like social group will influence Kyle to say, like, even if we elect, I don't know, Gavin Newsom, which is their big enemy, that social grouping will pressure Kyle into, and all the stuff he said about like supporting Democrats over Republicans will make him more amenable to not backing out if he is a part of the social group versus if we leave completely?
No, because I feel like what happens is you just become one of the good ones. That's what it felt like for me a lot. And that was a trend that I'd noticed where I thought I was doing a thing where it's like, look, I can show you that Democrats can be reasonable. And instead, people just view me as like the one reasonable Democrat. Much the same that like a person being friends with one black person doesn't make them not racist. They just think that that one black guy is like one of the good ones and he's an exception to all of the other bigoted views they have. I don't know how much pressure there is, especially when the whole environment, like I think if they were organic friends, like they were just people that hung out in real life and had different political beliefs, then I think maybe there's a chance of that, but not when it's an inorganic, artificially constructed online arena where they're very intentionally only keeping certain people in certain areas to further their political beliefs, basically. One thing that, and also in terms of intentionality, this is funny. I don't know how true this is, but Lauren told me this a while ago. Lauren Southern told me that when Charlie Kirk would do events, one of the huge things that these conservatives would do is every single time they do any show, any event, anything, anybody, they were so huge on taking pictures with people. Because apparently one of the things that was said was that like if you have a picture with somebody and you post it all over social media, it makes it really difficult for them to backstab you in the future because now you've got all these photos of you shaking hands and being friendly and everything. And it was one of the ways that they kind of like would enforce this group dynamic on each other where it's like, hey, look, we're friends and it's public and everybody knows it. So now you have to act right and you can never like come out against me. And yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't feel like it would be a huge push one way or another. Also, as a quick thing, I have to dip in 20 minutes to talk to Brad. Do you know who, there's a guy in my community called Kafka, and he was wondering if he could join and ask some questions. Is that okay with you or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
and you know what I just said? Yeah, go for it, yeah.
Can I run the bathroom really quick? Take 1 minute.
Go. You don't even have to run. Go for it.
No bathroom breaks.
Oh, I'll hold it for you, Daddy.
Oh, so Mooten's been here the whole fucking time doing nothing.
Well, yeah, you guys are having your combo. You want to see my cat?
No. But sure. Aww. In the box.
On top of Legos.
Oh, that means you get to dig in around him.
That's right. Kafka has to join and then goes AFK. Classic.
Fucking loser. Wait, what is this? Hold on. Oh no, fuck, I'll wait for her.
I'm back.
Okay. Okay, well.
The guy who wanted to talk isn't here.
Good, fuck him. Yeah, did you have anything? Or do you think that well, here's a question. Do you think that any of the far left people, I'll start with like, do you think any of them will enthusiastically support Stevens over Rogers or whatever if El Sayed loses the primary? Okay, good troll.
You're muted?
Hello?
Hi.
I'm muted?
No. Jolah was
I
muted.
was muted. Sorry. No, Kyle calls Haley Stevens MAGA light already. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
He calls a lot of the Democrats MAGA light.
True.
That's his go-to. They're good at buzzwords. They're really good at that. We don't have that nearly as much. Democrats always have to like use Republican phrases and turn it back on them. I feel like we don't make our own ever.
Yeah.
Well, we called him weird for a while. That was genuinely working. They hated that.
Just because
Yeah,
it picked
or
up so much buzz online and then, but then it dried out after a couple weeks, yeah. Couchfucker was good, I think.
Ugly.
That guy is fucking Voldemort, dude. Jesus fuck. What do you want, Kafka?
Hey, so I've been listening to some of your conversations recently, like, and when I'm listening to them, I have a hard time understanding kind of where like the Josiah types are coming from as far as like why they're afraid to kind of be adversarial to the DSA. Is it just, do they think that it's like unnecessary infighting, or like I don't want to assume bad faith. I'm sure there's some of them out there in bad faith, but like as far as people being worried about punching left, like what do you feel like their motivation there is?
To use an analogy with like my like in my personal relationships, it's like you have like a family that needs to come together for something, and some people have really bad views, but you know at the end of the day that you're gonna kind of care for each other and make the right decision for something. Like I know a lot of conservative family members and we came together for tough moments. So I think it's the necessary belief that all of these young people, like when I said earlier that Zoran Mamdani increased youth turnout by like 3 times in 2024 or 2025 versus the last mayoral election in 2020 in 2021, that there's such a huge group that believes already in this idea. We don't want to be too prickly to them as to when they off ramp from a more radical belief, which I had to do. Like I was a Jimmy Dore fan like 2018, 2019 when I was going through college. And I backed off that by listening to freaking the horse guy and a few of y'all who are on here right now. But I understand that if I would have heard that I'm like a toxic cancer, I might not have came off that radical bend the right way towards like more liberal ideology.
Well, like I think it's fair to say like maybe we shouldn't, call these people Reds and say we need to bring back
McCarthyist language, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm okay there, but like I think that like whenever I talk to my communist friends about this kind of stuff, they feel like any amount of kind of like pushback at all is just entirely unwarranted. How dare we? And like I think to me it's kind of a thing where like I expect that from them. Obviously, they support these candidates, but then whenever I hear a lot of sweeping going on for these leftist candidates, a lot of the time it has that same ring of indignation of like how like why are you so suspicious of Zoran Mandami whenever he's like we've got these like quotes from him saying that he believes in seizing the means of production or something like that. And it's like I think that it's like to me I just like I'm a capitalist avowedly. And so it's like, yeah, that would definitely be something of concern for me. And I would want to hear some kind of, language from him saying like, oh yeah, that was when I was younger. I don't mean that. But instead I see language like, oh, we should just condition our language better, which really makes me feel like I am rightly concerned because these people are saying, oh no, like I get it. You don't like my language, so I'm going to change my language.
Yeah, I get that too, and it's hard because like Kamala Harris's father, I believe, was like a Marxist professor. I think conservatives talked about that a lot. Like a lot of conservatives would run with that, and I don't know how Kamala was when she was like 25, 30, 35, which is the age these guys are in. So I don't know if she was more radical, and now she's in her 50s and she moderated. So it's hard for me to say. I don't know if we have any like historical comparisons. We've had big third party movements like Perot, and most of them were more liberal voters, but they then folded to be more democratic after that. So this is different because it is a group representing themselves as Democrats. It's not like a clear third party like Perot was. But I see what I know what you mean. Yeah.
I think also
and
as a
it's
quick
funny
thing,
because-
I just want to say real quick, and I somebody emailed me this actually. It's a really good point. I need to talk about this more. Whenever I talk about like a lot of this is not to kill this phrase, which I have, but like this tit for tat kind of behavior or whatever. My goal when I talk about like we need to enforce like a social cost on shitting on moderate Dems, when I say stuff like that, or when I say that we need to hit back on these people, people immediately go to thinking that's like, okay, so you want to basically be at full civil war with these people. We need to get like hardcore, like be ready to fight for our lives in the party and everything. When I talk about these things, my goal is the exact opposite of that. The idea is that if you know that horrendously shitting on your candidate in the general, on the moderate Dem in the general, is going to lead to huge pushback in the primaries against your candidate, that what's going to happen is you just won't do it. You'll realize like, okay, we have our far left candidates that we want to push, but like we're going to have to do it in a way that still makes us compatible in the generals, because if we don't, there's going to be a huge social cost to pay because they're enforcing that on their side and we're not enforcing it on our side. I think that if we enforced it on our side, if people like Josiah and Pisco and Destiny and Hutch and Adam Mockler and Brian Tyler Cohen and David Beckham, if all of them were really critical of Crystal and Kyle when they went unhinged on our moderate Dems, I don't think we would go to full-on party civil war. I think that Kyle and Crystal would just be more careful with the way they speak about moderate Dems, which I think would be good. That's like the end goal, I guess, of what I would want. Yeah.
Well, and also I think alongside that is I don't see a whole lot of people coming out here and being like, I fucking hate, Zoran Mandami because of his far left socialist ideas. I think it's, or like the DSA people, it's more like, man, these people are using a lot of really like vitriolic rhetoric, and I think it's not like they're like winning in this marketplace of ideas around policy. Their policy provisions are pretty simple. They're not even really that socialist. It's just like we're like a lot of it's centered around like affordability shit, and it doesn't really need to be a socialist position in a lot of ways, in my opinion. I think that they might have more extreme views, but I don't think that those extreme views are like what's like winning them things. And it's also not the thing that's like harming the Democrats in the same way as like them coming in and saying like Haley Stevens is a bot and paid for APAC shill. Is it Haley Stevens? I'm sorry, what's her first name?
Steve,
Okay. Yeah, Stevens is like a bought and paid for APAC shill. It's like, yeah, holy shit, maybe we don't have that kind of language here. I don't think that has anything to do with them being socialist or like this, like, oh man, we have to adopt some of their ideas so we can compete with them. It's like, no, like they're just shitting on us, and that makes them look good in these
No, I
different
agree
ways.
with
They're just
that.
riding the wave, right? Like,
My issue is that we can say that, and we don't have the same media infrastructure to respond in the same way. But when we have the leaders of the party not only responding to them in an adversarial tone, but doing it in a dumb way that's going to feed into their like political goals, like Gillibrand being a top Senate Democrat leading the Democratic Senate Committee, and she's like, or like a Democratic Senate Campaign Committee, and she's calling Zoran a radical jihadist. Like the moment he gets elected, that makes moderate Democrats look freaking insane. So that's why I'm saying the Chuck Schumer, Gillibrand, like the establishment of the party does have an issue. We need turnover. We have so many skilled leaders in this party ready to take control, take leadership, that we are just like, forcing under and not letting them, and they're making us look bad. They're honestly, the moderate leadership is making moderates look bad if you are like a liberal.
sure. And I think one of my communist friends brought up a point that was actually pretty funny, where it's like, let's say like the DSA does eat the Democratic Party. Like, let's say like 2028 comes around, DNC is totally dead. It's only DSA left, and every Democrat is voting for the DSA. Well, like at that point, for the DSA to maintain that position and power, they now would have to be a big tent party and moderate themselves, right? So like you just see, like otherwise the DNC people wouldn't vote for them. So like to me, I wonder how far can the DSA grow before like they are forced to moderate to keep growing and eating the DNC.
They're already having to moderate. Like Francesca
Oh,
is already
well,
running away from every position she ever held.
Well, one second. Like, I think there's a difference between like a candidate going, okay, I'm going to hide my true beliefs, versus the party as a whole going like, we are reaching a limit of political efficacy. We need to pivot and make sure our candidates are putting forth positions that are moderated such that we can take in the DNC. Because like right now, I think it's pretty easy for them to just come out and say like, we want a higher minimum wage, we want better healthcare, and we want lower gas prices, and that will like, that can win a primary by itself, just saying that shit. Right. But like, let's say we're in some kind of realistic political climate that doesn't have Trump anymore. Right. Like, I think that there's only so far that kind of affordability talk, especially if our economy recovers and we're feeling, and like people don't feel as much of a threat from kind of like economics. Now the DSA is kind of like, well, Israel's not going to win us this primary. Us seizing the means of production, us, those kinds of things I think aren't as much of winners. I think it's literally just that they have the ability to go on an affordability ticket in a bad economic climate, and so like on the one hand, it feels like it's scary to me that like this DSA stuff is rising, but I don't know how much, like, as they gain power, I feel like either their radicalness is going to kill them, or they're going to have to moderate such that they're not as much of a threat. Like they go from being Democratic Socialists to Sock Dems.
Or watch Scooby Doo. You know Scrappy Doo from Scooby Doo.
I do know who that person is.
I feel like Scrappy Doo is kind of like the DSA right now, like the little tiny guy that's wearing a big costume to seem like a big bad villain. But when we kind of peel it back, it's not going to be that big and strong. And to be clear, I know Destiny's got to go soon. The rhetoric I was responding to with like my tweets and everything was that one Twitter space conversation I was listening in on, where the rhetoric I heard was, you know what, maybe McCarthy was right. We must root out these evil communists by root and stem to make sure they do not infiltrate the rest of the party because they're so close to doing it. That's what I was saying was like the antisocial language. So this conversation is like categorically different from what I was expecting to be talking about. But I'm guessing that,
well, when I said this, I have always said that I'm not referring to like the average DSA voter. Like I don't think the average DSA voter, I've even said multiple times with regards to Hassan's audience, I don't think the average Hassan fan is a hardcore socialist. This is why I laugh at Hassan, because I think he gets into a lot of trouble sometimes when he gets dismissive of intersectional issues, and he fights sometimes with like his trans audience or any other non-class related thing with his audience, because he's getting frustrated that they're not understanding that he doesn't give a fuck about the class related stuff. And I think that's a funny thing. But I'm just worried that we're unable to push back against these far left elements, and the people have outwardly, openly stated that like they are trying to be subversive and they are trying to take over the party. And I don't know if that reaches a critical mass at some point. And you saw it happen so horrendously with the Republican Party that, I don't know. That's a spooky thing to me. And structurally, like these guys are favored in the Democratic Party the same way the Republicans are favored on the national level. So I don't know. It's just that's all scary to me. That nobody can say or push back against it all. It's spooky.
Darcy, can I ask, what do you think do you think there's any meaningful, like, let's say Haley Stevens is in a debate with Al-Sayed, and she just turns to him and goes, like, hey, do you believe in seizing the means of production? It's like, just straight up, do you believe in that? Right? And give those kinds of questions, like, do you think Israel should exist as a state? Right? Where, like, if he gives an answer of, I don't think Israel should be a state, it harms him with people that like Israel. If he says, I do think Israel should be a state, it harms him with leftists. Do you think that, like, those kinds of, like, I want to force you to answer this question to prove just how leftist you are, right? Because
I think
either
the issue
way,
is that,
it's
like,
hurting you on one side of the base.
I don't know. I don't even know what seize the means of production means to the average voter. I don't know if they even know what the fuck that means. Like, a person might say yes, they want him to seize the means of production if they think that it's like
version of it that a voter could understand, but would
no. I
identify
do
some
think
kind
that
of leftist
forcing
position.
stronger answers on certain things, I think, would be beneficial. Yeah, I'm not sure what the most effective ones would be in Michigan. I felt like in that last debate, it didn't feel like Stevens was responding much to Syed at all. Like, I didn't feel like she had a good way to target or attack him at all. But it's also hard.
He calls
in
himself
that,
a capitalist too, right?
he might, yeah. But it's also hard when you're dealing with the populist types, because the populist types they're literally promising you like the heavens. Like, they want to give you everything. I was looking at the Francesca lady's platform, and it's just like paid vacation and child leave and expanding the whatever the name is for the Wisconsin Medicaid program or whatever. It's just like all this stuff. And then when you ask for what is it that how are you going to tax these people more? It's just like, oh, we're going to put a millionaire and then a billionaire tax or whatever. It's like, there's no way this is raising money for this. So I don't even know on the debate stage how you even compete for that, because it seems like it's such an unpopular position to have to say, like, okay, guys, we got to think about our budget. We need to raise money for this shit. Like, nobody wants to actually have that conversation.
Well, I think, sure. And I think that's kind of the nature of, like, you're going to have these, like, maverick progressive types that are going to come in and promise the moon, and then, so they're going to win some, but then it's on us to say, hey, remember whenever Mamdani won and he promised free buses and he didn't give us that? Remember whenever he won and he was going to do these fucking grocery stores and they all flopped, right? Because, like, right now, it's
sure,
like,
but I don't even know. I understand what
Well,
you're saying from a policy level, but I don't even know if that's what the perception of most people is. I think because Mamdani is positioned in such a way that he really doesn't get attacked by anybody, I think most people think that Mamdani is doing, like, a phenomenal job as the mayor of New York City. I think he's doing a fine job, but, like, he didn't solve the budget problem. He obviously, the free buses and the grocery store thing, I think have both been soft.
He's working on the grocery.
Well, but
no, it hasn't been soft.
The buses
Are you sure?
He's still talking about it's going to be 30% off of, like, literally anything else anybody buys. He just did a whole
but it's not. Isn't he just outsourcing it to? He's just basically subsidizing, like, private companies that are going to be selling in grocery stores.
I wish he was. No, he's instead hiring people on the budget of fucking New York to have them run the companies. They did, like, a big hiring campaign yesterday or 2 days ago.
Huh. Okay.
And to be clear, I agree with you in the moment right now that it's not going to be super effective. I'm saying, like, right now, when this lady in Wisconsin, wherever, comes up and says, I don't like the current system, I like a system where we get everything, right? Well, there's nothing for us to really point to say she's wrong, other than, well, we can talk about how feasible it is, but people don't want to hear that conversation. But the next person that comes up and says, I want to replace this thing with wishes and rainbows, and we say, hey, here's that lady that just got in with wishes and rainbows, and her term fucking sucked. She did none of it, and we're in a worse position, right? I think right now they're just benefiting from the fact that there's literally no way for us to, like, point to an example of them really failing in these kinds of promises that's meaningful. I think now that they are in, we have meaningful examples to say, look, y'all's policies suck ass, and we shouldn't do those, as opposed to, like, well, here, let me pull out my fucking Excel spreadsheet and explain why bus fare is an important part of how like, the network.
You see what you just said there? You said Excel spreadsheet. Like, that's one of the reasons why, like, Cheryl and New Jersey's doing so good, is because she's understanding that we cannot talk like technocrats, and we can't go by, like, percentage of policies and how they impact this tax credit and this minority-owned business or whatever. Like, that politics is gonna fail. So we probably need liberals, like, to do what John Ossoff is doing, and to push the conversation and bring legislation. Yeah, use populist rhetoric to get elected. But shitting on his own probably has no function at this point. We should be learning from him. Like, if Joe Biden had some way to get credit for the infrastructure package that he gave more money to red states for, that'd be so awesome to have that messaging. And I think the center left can do that, but there's no need for it, because they're 80-year incumbents, and they have their friends. They're hiring their friends, not who's skilled at creating, like, liberal propaganda. We gotta root that out.
That's like an infrastructure problem with, like, the DNC itself.
Yeah, that's like the main issue. There's the media landscape, though.
Well, Sure, but then on the other side of that, like I think that Democratic vote, like the Democrat offer whenever they go out there, is fundamentally flawed in the sense that they are expecting and they're saying if you want our message, you need to be educated on some level. That's fucking stupid. Showing up and telling voters, hey, I've got a really great message for you. Can you be a little bit educated so you understand it? That is always a losing bid. Leftists are not doing that. They're showing up and saying, here's money. Right-wing people are not doing that. They're showing up and saying, brown people suck. All right. You don't need to be educated to understand either message. The DSA has complex and high-level policies that I don't agree with, and I think they're fucking stupid, but they have them. They don't fucking talk about them, though. They don't talk about those things. They just come in and talk about really basic shit. I'm saying that right now, the only way to attack DSA policies and stuff is with complicated conversations that nobody wants to have. If we have,
well, I think, I mean, you
right?
could look at what you're saying. If the examples that you gave earlier are true, I mean, you could look at them and just say, like, didn't you try this particular thing in this particular district, and like you didn't get the free buses or whatever? Like, it wouldn't be like a technocratic speech. It would just be like you tried
Right.
this and it didn't work, and then you would point to the example.
Right.
But I mean, like,
And
yeah,
you
if
have
those
like a funny
examples,
nickname.
sure, if those
too,
examples
to be
worked,
like,
I mean, yeah,
"Ah."
you could do it. But like, I mean, obviously, the whole Democratic establishment is completely lost when it comes to doing messaging right now. So it seems impossible.
Well,
for them
and
to do,
I agree with you, but like with Ossoff, with Newsom, I think that we see that we have the fucking there's a caliber of person within the DNC that has that messaging, and I feel like at the same time there's this kind of weird. I'm not saying you're doing this right now, but I feel like there's this kind of weird thing where it's like, why aren't these candidates who are like in a political position where they actually have like work to do also coming in and rebuilding the fucking party, right? And I mean, it's just it feels a little
sure, but
frustrating
again,
to me
I think
where it's like,
you have to be really careful when we analyze how effective people are, because it comes down to how much they've been battle tested, right? So Newsom was good not because he presented a strong liberal message, but because he presented finally a strong fuck Trump message. And then Ossoff is good because he's a purple senator who is able to present a decently strong kind of Democratic message and also a fuck Trump message, but he hasn't been targeted yet hardcore either, especially by the far left. Like, they're kind of staying away from him. We'll see what these people look like if they get more kind of like center stage. Like if Newsom or Ossoff were to start to run, I imagine the reputations that these people have would start to significantly change, because the far left people hate both of these motherfuckers, absolutely. And you'll start to see the rhetoric pouring on them more. I don't know what that'll look like ultimately, but
Just my last point before I hop off here.
Yeah.
Can you identify the difference, the disconnect for why you think that conversation with Hutch and Josiah and Pisco was so heated versus the conversation we had, and why? Like, is there a personal thing there, or what do you think the difference is between the tones?
The difference is it's probably because you came in hardcore with the intention of trying to convince or persuade me of your particular the idea that you want me to have.
And you don't think that you think Pisco's like not doing that in good faith?
No, I think he's trying to debate to win. Spoiler alert, not to spoil anything, but I listened to you last night on Tom. You were way more aggressive towards my positions there. So I thought when you came in today, I thought we were going to be screaming at each other. But you're trying very hard to have the conversation in such a way that you don't shut my brain off immediately by putting me into debate mode. So I imagine you're trying to be like intentionally persuasive right now. This isn't like saying you're Machiavellian or anything, but I mean, you're obviously trying to convince me of a thing. I think that when a lot of online people, me included, when you get like in debate mode, the goal of the conversation changes, I think, quite a bit. Yeah. But that'd be my guess. Yeah, you're trying to convince me of an idea because you think I'm correct rather than like win a debate on a particular thing. So I imagine there are probably things I've said in this conversation that you probably disagreed with more, that you decided not to like, go into the dirt with me on because you didn't think it was conducive to the end goal of the conversation. We might get, yeah.
Well, Tom took the position that AOC is knowingly a part of the DSA conspiracy to unseat the entire Democratic Party and replace it with socialism nationally. So, and you backed off that position. I thought you were going to take that position.
Well, I don't know. So my issue, and this is where the whole, obviously people are mad at me over the JD Vance over AOC clip. My issue is that I don't know if they would provide pushback to it. And it's the fact that you would have a question is kind of what worries me. That, I guess, like, oh man, bro's gonna kill me. If I do like racist or sexist humor on my stream or whatever, if you see a clip or whatever, you can have an opinion. But if you watch me, you don't know what my positions are on these things. It's like, I'm probably not racist, I'm probably not sexist, generally speaking. Like, you know how I feel about communism, you know how I feel about Trump and MAGA, you know how I feel about immigration. So like, I have some leeway to be, like, I think we should have open borders, I think it's good economically or whatever. Like, I can make some statements like this, but people know that I'm not insane. When you look at people like AOC, or if you look at some of these, anybody that's kind of like DSA or DSA aligned, you don't know what their actual beliefs are because they've never openly or publicly pushed back on kind of the crazier left-leaning elements elements. And so there's that open question of always like, if this person was in a greater position of power or influence, would they leverage it to, wheel in more super extremely left-leaning people? And I think that's the fear. Yeah, I have that fear. That's what I consider. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Appreciate y'all having me on. I think it might be more productive if we had a conversation. I don't know if Wick gets something like this together, but if we had a more true believer in the DSA as well, so I could kind of push back against both of you at the same time, it might be a little bit easier to find the tension points. But yeah, I appreciate y'all for having me on. Jolah Politics, JOLAH Politics on YouTube, and also mainly TikTok.
Cool.
My new rap song's out, guys, on my YouTube. But yeah, anytime y'all need something or any shows or anything, hit me up. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot. Have fun. Be careful. Wait, somebody link his TikTok or YouTube in chat so we can link it. Okay, I'll be back in like probably 40 minutes.
Can I ask you one last question?
What? Yeah, go for it.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.